have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
Our chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight downside, speed off.
Bring in, speed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, y'all. Every stream starts out that way. I think that's my version of saying, "What's up, guys? Welcome to the video today," or whatever the kids are saying these days. You know the drill. Let me know if you can hear me, John Galloway for NASA Spaceflight here, and let me know if you can see the live feed. This is coming from the beach over there in Boca Chica because, as you can see, well, hopefully, I mean, y'all tell me if you can see it or not. As you can see, we have a load spreader and straps attached up to the top of Booster 4, and that huge crane, the lift there, all the way up the side, and that is an indication that we may be getting everybody's favorite rocket event, non-launch rocket event, the CATO, the crane-assisted takeoff this morning. So we're hoping that we see a lift of Booster 4 from the transport stand up to the orbital launch mount, the big table behind everything, and we are going to be here doing some live commentary as we do with the NASA Spaceflight team. Let me get you introduced to the other people that will be doing commentary for me. And let's see how this goes today. With me in the back channel, I've got Chris Gebhardt. Chris, good morning.
Good morning indeed. How you doing today, Das?
I'm ready to either see this thing lift or sit here for 4 hours waiting for it and then see it lift. How about you?
I think the same.
Y'all, you've heard Chris's voice before. You'll be hearing him do some commentary, answer some questions, and read some chats and stuff like that over the course of the stream. Also back in the studio, Derek. DK, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, everybody. I'm doing good. I can't believe that we're already doing this again. It's crazy.
Seems like just yesterday we had a big
breakneck
stream.
speed. I know. My goodness.
Exactly. Y'all, Derek is a content manager, or is the content manager for NASA's spaceflight. He'll be joining us as well. Those are the dulcet sounds of his voice that you'll be hearing. Yeah, you know. That's a compliment. Isn't that a compliment?
Yeah, no, I'll take it. I get it all the time.
Yeah, dulcet sounds. I don't know where I got that
I'll be
from.
dulcet, yeah.
Hey, also in the back channel, Michael Baylor's back there as well. Michael pressing the buttons and pulling the levers again. Today we'll be hopping in with some answers and stuff. He may not be on comms right now. We'll see.
Sorry, I'm here doing too many things at once, but hopefully going to see a lift in the not too distant future with Booster 4 onto the orbital launch table.
Yep. All good. You know Michael's voice as well, y'all. He's here all the time. And then out in the field, we've got a little bit of a cool situation because Mary is out there. She's rolled out her remote, and I believe this is Mary's angle that we're seeing right now. Of course, Mary is Boca Chica gal, the original Starship photographer, the one who's there when it's not a big event going on. She's there every day bringing us those daily videos out of Boca Chica right here on the NASA Spaceflight channel. Make sure you hop over on Twitter because she's probably going to be tweeting some stuff at Boca Chica gal. Massive thanks to her for rolling out. And the cool situation is Jack Beyer is out there as well as Michael removes the name tag and switches to Jack's camera at the exact same time. They've actually set up on opposite sides of the booster, so we have two different close-in angles. So massive thanks to Jack. He scrambled on a plane out there because the Starbase surge had so much going on, it was basically impossible for one person to cover the entire site of Starbase, I guess. And so now we've got two NSF folks out there. Of course, Mary is always out there, and then Jack out there also assisting, bringing us two different angles close up of the booster this morning. I think I got everybody, right? We got Mary, we got Jack, we got DK. Yeah, all right, Chris, we got everybody in there. So I think we're ready to start talking here. Now, let me do a little bit of housekeeping really quickly. You know that we do the streams live. Our commentary streams, we are watching live feeds coming from Boca Chica. Less than 10 seconds. It happens in the real world, and it comes spewing out of your monitor in the form of photons. There's a bunch behind the scenes that makes that happen, but this is live. And as we're doing it, we're going to try to answer your questions. So if you've got questions for us, tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight. Of course, there's some cool new information that has been confirmed as well. If you're a fan of Tim, the everyday astronaut, he dropped that really awesome video walking around with Elon yesterday. Apparently, that's part 1 of 3. And we got a couple things that we can confirm now, I guess, because Elon said them. We sort of guessed at some of that stuff. Some of the things we guessed were pretty accurate. Some of them, well, let's just say you don't use a camera mount point to lift the entire booster. So the little tab sticking off the side is not, in fact, a camera mount. There you go. You can see it. You can see the yellow part there. That's actually the crane attached to the sling, attached to the spreader. But a lot of cool new information coming out of that as well. And over the course of the day of the stream, we will be answering your questions. So make sure you tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. Same thing with Super Chats. You do a Super Chat or something like that. We try to read them on occasion. We don't always get to them all in real time. Michael, what about that? Well, apparently Jack went ahead and enhanced, and there you can see the attach point where the slings attach to either side of the booster right there on the skinny part between the grid fins, and that is how you lift the entire almost 200-ton booster. Now, right now, the booster is not in a 200-ton configuration because Elon counted some of the landing fuel reserves. So this is probably somewhere north of 160 tons based on the information Elon was giving yesterday, not being fueled at all. So we'll see exactly where it ends up. But that is literally one of 2 straps that are attached to those hard points that they use to lift up this entire booster, which is a little crazy. Don't y'all think?
It's crazy that they're lifting at 100 and... I'm sorry, what did you say again? 160? Is that what the...
Yeah, it's somewhere north of 160.
Ton?
Yep.
That's insane. 160-ton booster by 2 points. Like, these tiny... Like, but they look tiny from this perspective.
Yep.
But it looks like they're approximately half a human. But...
Half a human, right? It looks small.
Yeah.
It's hard to get context, but
yeah,
then
exactly.
you get with the lift next to him up there, it looks like that's about the size of somebody's torso and head, maybe. So not small once you actually compare it to somebody. It looks like that lift may be doing some checkouts. They're sort of flying around looking at things. Maybe that's a good sign, huh?
Yeah, hopefully they're checking everything out, making sure that we're going to be able to get this on the platform.
Yep. So let's see here. Who's got the panel up this morning? Do we have some questions?
I have it up. If you want some questions, I can get you some.
Yeah, and Chris, are you ready to start answering some?
In a minute.
Okay, cool. All right. So, DK, let's start going with some questions.
Let's see, from, oh boy, I did not look at this name until now. Giulio Dondi. What's the purpose for the spikes at the bottom of the grid fins, and won't they interfere with the catching mechanism?
So that's an interesting question. Elon was talking about the catching mechanism, and it wasn't completely clear if they were going to try and catch it on the grid fins or those little tabs that are between the grid fins and lower than them both. So don't know if that is something that would interfere with the catching mechanism. Because of what he said, it wasn't exactly clear on the answer there, I don't think. But the points on the grid fins help them go through the air. They're almost like little airplane nose cones, lots of little airplane nose cones. Remember, if you look up through the bottom of this grid fin, it's actually open. It's not a flat surface. It's like a waffle, but with no bottom to the waffle. If you poured the batter in it, it would just go right through the thing because they're designed to let very high-speed air go through them very quickly with a minimum amount of drag. So there you go. You can see all those points. Yeah. Jeez. Suddenly. You can see all those points there. And those points, you could actually think of them as sort of a lot of little aircraft nose cones to make it so there's not just a flat surface there and help guide the air through those grid fins. But remember, that's open. You could, if you poured waffle batter in that, it would go right through there. And you'd have a really lousy waffle because it would just burn.
Waffle batter.
It's like a space waffle.
Okay. I'll take one space waffle, please.
Right?
Right quick, George Slater and Peter Charles James Ryman, both with some new memberships. Thank you guys for your continued support. That's great. As I already responded to Ian in chat, but he said, how do you expect me to get any work done this week?
Well, so what a problem to have. Like, SpaceX is getting the work done, and so you're not getting the work done.
They're being too efficient. Let's see. I don't know that we have the answer to this, but we can chat about it for a minute. Arsenio Gonzalez asking, do you know when Starship will be stacked on Starship?
So
Presumably
that's
when Booster 4.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We know that late last night, around 3:45 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Starship actually got stacked itself. So the nose cone, the forward section of Starship, or Ship S-20, or Ship 20, was stacked on the aft section, the fuel tanks and engines and stuff, in the high bay around 3:45 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Central Nightlight Time, whatever it is when it's dark. So that happened last night. We have seen them move pretty quickly after something stacked in the high bay. It doesn't take a week to make it ready to roll out. We also know that a set of engines was mounted on the bottom, 3 of those huge vacuum Raptor engines, the huge nozzles on the vacuum Raptor, and then 3 of the sea level Raptors near the middle. All of that was mounted. We got pictures from Elon, and we saw it live on Starbase Live, the entire ship being stacked. So could it roll out later today? Potentially. Could it roll out tomorrow? Probably more likely that it could roll out tomorrow. When does it get stacked? I mean, no earlier than a couple days from now. Maybe it could get stacked on Friday. Today's Wednesday. But again, all of this is a learning process. It's the first time they've put a Super Heavy booster on the orbital launch mount. It's the first time they've put a Starship on top of a Super Heavy booster. There's a lot of firsts going on here, so there's lessons to be learned. There's things to be taken. Even though you're surging and you're going fast, all hands on deck, still operations that are very dangerous and need to be taken slowly. So we will see. We will see. But if everything went exactly to plan, could there be a Starship on the top of Super Heavy this week? I think it's possible.
Which is just wild, like the breakneck pace that they're able to. Waking up, I did not know that they were going to have Starship stacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is in high bay there.
Yep.
Goodness.
That happened just last night. It was late that we saw the image actually, the nose cone actually roll over into the high bay, and then just a couple hours after it rolled in, it was on top of that, the aft section there. So
this time yesterday, Booster 4 was in there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. What a
Goodness.
problem to have. Jeez.
Well, I mean, like the records that they've been shattering in time. I mean, I mean, it is still mind-boggling to me in many ways, even though we saw it, that they were able to get 29 Raptors installed in just such a brief period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ooh.
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to try to use the word mounted for those Raptors. I don't know that those Raptors were actually all plumbed and ready to fly. So, until they actually say that these engines are ready to fly and completely hooked up and all the electronics and wiring and all the feed lines and that sort of stuff, I really want to use the term mounted, you know?
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. I won't be too annoying about it, though. How's that? Let's keep hitting the questions there. I mean, going fast and furious with the questions while we wait for them to do this lift.
Let's see. From Shining Siren in chat, do you think they might test the RVAC engine before stacking on top of Super Heavy? Which,
Chris,
yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, so yeah, I mean that's a good question. Do we know if they've done any work over at suborbital pad B, or anything? Because if they were going to test them, that's where it would have to go unless they cleared booster 3 off of suborbital pad A.
Well, the interesting thing, Chris, is that suborbital pad B currently has the thrust rams installed for the proof testing without the Raptors. So the thrust rams simulate the forces of the Raptors, and there are rams for 6 Raptors, including the 3 RVACs. So that seems to indicate kind of what Doss was talking about, that those Raptors are probably not installed for flight. It seems like they might just be installed for fit checks, and then they will do the full stacking, they'll take Starship back off, and then they'll go into proof testing without the Raptors for a bit.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. There you go. There you go.
Let's see, another one from chat here. Magnetom asking, do you think the tank farm is ready to fuel the booster for a static fire?
Nope.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen fuel deliveries to them yet.
Yeah, they're not shelled, they're not plumbed. There's still
Yeah.
workers working on them on a daily basis. We saw the Buckner crane actually on the screen, the yellow crane. That's the Buckner crane, and we saw that move around, and it's got a load spreader on it right now. But we haven't seen them actually do anything with it yet. So that tank farm, the orbital tank farm, definitely does not look like it's ready to hold fuel, store fuel, handle cryogenic liquids. I just don't think it's there yet.
I mean, you can literally see the hatches on 2 of those silver
Yes.
tanks right now are open.
Are open.
So
That's true. Yeah.
absolutely nothing inside of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Looking like
And look at this.
our lift is coming down.
Yep.
Hopefully a
eye,
good
DK.
sign. Hopefully a good sign.
Oh yeah, and there's a close up of those open hatches on the tank farm.
Indeed. I think that's Jack's camera view, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you,
That's
Jack.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's someone there on that lift, like working on the open hatch, right? I think that's a person, or is that like gear that looks like a helmet or something? Looks like a guy on a laptop. But they're very still. I'm not sure. Oh, well, I guess that could be it. Yeah, that looks like somebody working to me. I see safety harnesses and stuff. Did we auto blur that face? That was amazing. How did we do that? I don't know if we ever have to worry about blurring faces again after Tim's video.
Yeah, right. Let's see.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just real quick. Tom Burks, thanks so much for the new membership. We really appreciate that ongoing monthly support, as well as Slon and Grumpy Haas. So I love the name, Grumpy Haas. Thank you so much for the new memberships. Very, very much appreciated. Here's a good question. I think it's one that's on everybody's mind. Will we see a 29 Raptor static fire?
Not today.
Not today. Eventually, I would think yes, right? Because they're going to want to gather all of that data on their ignition sequence, how that's all going to work, getting 29 Raptor engines up and running in a short period of a couple of seconds, doing all of those checkouts, seeing how they function with one another. You know, definitely at some point we'll see a 29 or a, what is it, 31? Is that the new number for what subsequent boosters will be for Raptor engines? They're increasing
33, 29 to 30. Is it 33?
Is it 33 or 31? I forget.
33 plus 6 would be... Yeah,
it's been all of them. It's been all of them.
Where
at
are
some
we
point.
at with that? Like, this one is not the full complement of engines, which is 29 slots.
Right.
But Elon has said the total number, like the total in number, would be 33?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Okay, and that's not including the boosters on the Starship. The engines on the Starship. That's just the engines on the bottom, I think. We'll verify that.
That's how he phrased it. Yeah.
I think that's right, but that's one of the things that's like you say out loud and you're like, did I just psych myself out? We will get the actual verification on that because it is something they changed. We know that this is not the final thrust section design for a super heavy booster. We know that they're looking at putting some other cramming more engine in there somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So to sort of go back to the question, at some point they will need to static fire a full booster like this. So not today on this one, but eventually, yeah, we'll see 29 and eventually 33 Raptors firing together in a static fire. Yeah.
Yep.
Good deal. Hey, CMP Railroad, thank you so much for the support. Glad you're checking in nicely from a train. Good to have you with us. Wouldn't be a stream without CAMP Railroad, would it, Das?
There you go. That's a name we see all the time. Appreciate the support, CAMP.
Yeah, definitely. Rough Riders Show, another regular on our stream, was asking if we knew how badly the hotels were already booked with the surge. We personally don't, just because we don't have to get a hotel when we're there. So I don't know, but I would imagine I'd imagine they're filling up pretty good, and I'm fascinated to see how this area is going to handle that influx of people when flights begin.
I would not
for
be
this vehicle.
surprised if they're having trouble with rental cars, because when Jack
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and folks have
sure.
flown down there, not during the surge, there were no cars available anywhere near Brownsville. And that was sort of exacerbated by, there was a big flooding that came through Texas like a month or two ago, ruined a lot of vehicles. And so a lot of the rental cars, the entire fleets were just checked out because people's cars had been destroyed and were still in the shop. And that was going on for months after that flooding happened all over the south part of Texas. And they didn't have cars then. With the surge coming in, we couldn't get cars before the surge. I imagine there's a lot of people at SpaceX walking or pedaling places. So I'm searching for a hotel in Brownsville right now, and I'm going to see if they're all booked up as well. But Brownsville proper really not set up for this. South Padre Island does have a lot of capacity in terms of hotel accommodations because it used to be a big spring break and summer destination. But South Padre Island proper is a pretty good drive away. So I would not want to stay there in South Padre Island if I was having to drive all the way back and forth. I could get a hotel. Like if I needed a hotel tonight in Brownsville, there's a couple. I'm a Hilton person, like a Hilton honors person, so like Hampton Inn and stuff. But I could get a hotel tonight. It looks like, so not completely stacked up yet in terms of hotels.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just used my account to search for a room. That's all I did. So
Looks like it's not too bad.
yeah, not too bad.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm just going to say real quick, and John, thank you so much for that new membership, and Casper as well, thank you for the supporting membership. Very much appreciated.
From chat here, Paul M2112 asking if anyone knows the weight of Franken crane in this configuration. Because I was kind of wondering that too. Like the counterweight that has to be on there to be able to lift Booster 4 right now has got to be just massive.
I haven't. Look, I didn't do like all of the angles and the forces and stuff like that, but maybe I'm going to guess here. But it seems to just be like common sense that if the booster weighs over 160 tons, would the counterweights also weigh near 160 tons? You got lever arms and angles and stuff like that, but yeah. I wonder if that's not almost 200 tons worth of counterweight on the back, you know?
It's a big crane.
Yeah.
It is. That's just the counterweights, too. That's not including the mass of the crane itself.
Yeah, right? Goodness.
Not playing around.
Yeah. Here's another good question. In the shot of the top of Booster 4, there weren't any fueling connections. Does this confirm that S-20 is going to be fueled through an umbilical arm? Yes. We did already know that ahead of time, because there are fueling ports on the side of the Starship that had been viewed. So yeah, it won't flow upward through the booster into Starship. This one will be fueled with an arm.
A good question that we talked about a little bit yesterday, but anybody joining us for the first time today from Fireworking, what are composite overwrap pressure vessels? COPVs?
Yeah, the COPVs, these are what provide the pressurants and the pressurization for the propellant tanks. So that is what they are. A rare, simple answer.
There you go. There.
Space Channel 5, thanks for the new membership. Very much appreciated there.
From
suddenly COPVs.
Say what?
There you go.
There they are.
Right
Yeah.
the
Suddenly, right there on the screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Asking ye shall receive.
Those double cylinder, the black cylinders there. From Space Spark. What if one or two of the engines of the Super Heavy don't ignite?
Then you don't lift off and you don't go anywhere. That's the simplistic answer. Yeah, if you command all the engines to ignite and two of them do not, or even if one of them does not, usually all of the systems are made so that you have an issue and they shut down the engine safely, the clamps do not release, and you don't go anywhere. If we sort of take that question and morph it a little bit into what if all 29 or 33, depending on which version of Starship you're on, What if all of them light successfully, the vehicle releases from the pad, and very quickly thereafter, a couple of them fail and shut down? Then Super Heavy just keeps on going. It's got an incredible thrust to weight ratio per the last update from Elon of 1.5. And SpaceX, just like the Falcon 9, they really like to build in a redundancy into their systems so that if you lose a couple of engines right as you are coming off the pad, your vehicle can still complete the entire flight.
Question from chat from Jose Moreno.
Sorry. Just sorry. Yeah, go ahead, DK, sorry.
Oh,
okay. No, we have news.
We have news. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
The V4 lift is in 30 minutes per a loudspeaker announcement.
Oh, all right. That's great. My goodness.
Cool.
All right. Well, from Jose Moreno, while we wait for our lift here, we've got a question asking what the 4 white towers are for. And I think, is that a question about the cryo shells?
Maybe. Chris, you got it.
The 4 white towers. This is usually a NASA spaceflight joke, because we always get asked sometimes on streams when we're covering launches what the 4 towers surrounding the rocket are.
New.
And most of the time our answer to that is those are the lightning protection towers. So that's a nice little joke.
Yeah,
All
inside
right.
joke there.
You got one in. Jeez. Oh boy. From Benny Shu in chat asking if the COPVs will ever go inside the booster.
Well, you would think that to get off the ground they would, because those, I mean, that's just like precariously perched on the outside of the slipstream there. I think ideally, yes, they would go inside the booster if this is the one that ends up doing the flight, or at least aero covers would be put over them. But I think an important point to note with the COPVs too is that eventually what they want to switch to is autogenous pressurization for the tanks. So the COPVs would not be needed in the design in that regard. So yeah, inside would be better, or they need to be covered most likely with some kind of aero cover there, if this is the one that's going to do the ascent.
Yeah.
That or kudos to SpaceX. Those are bolted on there like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have some sort of shroud going around it.
Yeah.
Let's see. From Eric Skoll, we got a €5 super chat asking, does the booster need to be pressurized in order to handle the weight of Starship?
Yeah, it does. And the boosters in the Starships are actually always sort of pressurized unless the doors to the interior of the tanks are open and workers are inside of there for some reason. So like right now, that booster is kind of pressurized. Not like flight pressure, but pressurized.
Let's see. I'm just going to thank a few people for being so generous as to give some super chats. Jason Dollinger with a $20 super chat. Thank you very much. Hamster Space Nerd 3000, which is just a hilarious name. Thank you very much. Harry Moran with £5. Kendall Winters just now with a super chat as well. Thank you guys very much for the support. Thank you for helping us keep the lights on. Appreciate it a ton. Both for this stream and then also for our 24/7 live stream. Got an interesting question from Bob Smith because I don't know offhand. Do you think they're going to full stack before the booster thrust sim?
You know, given how much Elon has talked about wanting the full stack out there, I'm going to go with yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Fit checks, there's a lot to think about, and here's my thinking on it, right? You need to know if the orbital launch mount is set up correctly. So they've been testing it. They've been looking at it. They want to put a booster, and I'm guessing here. I'm going to say they want to put a booster as if I know, but this is what I would think. They want to put the booster on it. They want to put the Starship on it so that if there's a problem, they catch it now. And if they need to rework anything with that massive infrastructure, they can say, all right, we need to rework that. We know now. I'm going to pull Starship. I'm going to pull Super Heavy off of the mount. I'm going to take them over to do other things, potentially tests on the suborbital test bands. We know the rafts are there. The rams are there for Starship. We know that the Pad A actually has the adapter to put a booster on it. So the suborbital pads could be continuing to make progress with things like static fires or cryo tests or stuff like that, while they also work to correct any issue that they find on the orbital launch mount. So that's what I think is going on here. It's going to be a fantastic photo op, right? Maybe they didn't need the engines in order to do that, but what would the photo op be without the engines on there? And I have a feeling they're going to try to just verify everything's looking good over at the orbital platform and the orbital launch mount and all that implies, and then pull it back over and continue work on the suborbital pads while they work any issues that are identified over on the orbital side. Again, that's not official information or anything. That's me just sort of thinking through common sense. If I was in charge of this, what do I think that I would do? And of course, I don't even have all the information, so whoever's in charge has a lot more info than me. I'm just guessing. What do y'all think?
I tend to agree with what you said, actually.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good chance to just catch things early enough, run through what you've made your procedures as, right? A chance to get the team familiar with things. Yeah,
good deal.
Bruce Fitzgerald in chat said basically how I feel about it. It's, you know, always fit check before the glue up, you know?
Yeah.
When
Yes.
you're putting something together. Make sure the pieces go into the other pieces.
This is like the measure twice, cut once. This is the second measurement before you start cutting things by lighting Raptor engines. So
perfect analog.
you know, I tried.
Going through all of the chat here, trying to pull
Oh, yeah,
questions. Thank you.
Yeah,
everyone
I've got a good
if you got some, go ahead.
here. So this one is asking, this question is asking, would it be possible to land the Super Heavy like the Starship with its belly flop? The answer to that is no. The element that allows the belly flop on the ship part of the Starship system are the aerosurfaces, which help guide it down through the atmosphere, keep it stable, adjust its pitch yaw, and roll as needed as it's doing the belly flop maneuver. And then the 3-engine Raptor relight, that the flip and burn, as we call it, that reorients it for the touchdown. The boosters don't have to do that, because the boosters will either be on suborbital trajectories out toward landing platforms like the converted oil rigs or things like that, or they will do boost backs to the launch site and they'll come in and get caught by the tower, so they don't need to do the belly flop. And based on their trajectory, and when you do the boost back burns and everything like that, they will come in more like the Falcon 9s with the grid fins as they come in toward the tower for the catch. But great question there. And Rockwell Tori, thank you so much for the support. Very much appreciated there. And yes, thank especially to Mary and Jack out there in the heat today, and to Dawson, Michael, pulling all the levers behind the scenes as well. Thank you.
Just trying to fix stuff right now.
No, you're good. For Kush Bandley, they're asking if they're going to see a test fire of all 29 Raptors on the booster.
We think, but not today.
Like, presumably?
Exactly, because like we were saying a little bit earlier, eventually they're going to need to do it. So the answer to the question is yes, they will eventually test either the 29 configuration or the 33 configuration, probably the 29, since they seem to be wanting to test this booster with a lot of as much as they can. But yeah, just not today, but definitely they'll need to.
Can you speak at all to why we have 29 on this one right now and not the 33 that we're going to be having?
Because 29 was the number they had originally reduced down to, and was the baseline configuration for a while before they decided to add more.
So is it
And
33
the
for
design has
redundancy
just
then?
changed. It might be redundancy, increased performance. They realized they could do it. You know, it provides a bit more of increased contingency in case you lose a couple of engines as you're headed up. So yeah. But I mean, yeah, the number of engines on this booster has roller coastered throughout its development cycle a bit. So not surprising that the number changed again.
This is a question that I thought was interesting from Blessed Osprey, asking if there's going to be a method of transport for the boosters and ships that is quicker than the SPMTs used now. I don't know if there's anything that we know of as far as plans for how they could move things faster, but also like they do move pretty fast. It's you know, from a matter of perspective.
Yeah, the speed at which it goes to the launch site is pretty much about safely what you can handle with a vehicle like that. Even
Yeah.
at the Kennedy Space Center with the crawler transporters, they have like a maximum loaded speed of about a mile per hour, right? And then they have to slow down at certain points as they're navigating it. And I mean that's just the mass and the size of the vehicle and the need to keep it perfectly level as you're going down the road. So it's not really that there's a system that could necessarily do it faster because of how you have to keep it level as you're going down the road. So SPMTs in this case are a really good solution for that.
Here's one from Phantom. How does the stage separation mechanism work on Starship?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
we have some info on that because we've been talking about that. And so basically, you know how the Starlink satellites separate off the top of the Falcon 9?
Yeah.
That. Only
It's
for
literally
stage
that?
separation.
Oh.
Literally that. Stage step is a Starlink style flip. So pop the two stages, the connections between the two stages, and then as the booster, I would assume what that means is that the booster would sort of either use tank venting to start to reorient and start to, you know, very slow rotation, and then separate them like that. And your booster is then also kind of on its flip around maneuver at that point to start heading back to the launch site for the boost back burn, and then Starship can fire up, it can use its thrusters and or light up the Raptor engines and correct its roll and its stability and continue onward to orbit. But that is the current stage separation mechanism, is a Starlink style flip.
And do we know anything about the reaction control for the booster itself at this point?
We do. We do. So we did get confirmation from Elon in the video with Tim Dodd that I'm searching for it. I know I read it. Just that they are not going to have thrusters. They're basically going to use tank vents. Yes, there it is. Tank vents will be used on Booster 4 for its RCS, and they're looking to do something very similar for the ship eventually. So ship still has thrusters. But the booster will simply use tank vents as its RCS, and that's what they're looking to eventually switch the ship to as well. And James, thanks so much for the new membership, and Port as well. Thank you very much for that new membership. Very much appreciated in terms of that monthly support. And Desmo, thanks so much for the support. Giving a shout out to Mary there. Yes, indeed, to Mary, and also to Jack, who's out there in the heat with Mary today as well.
And speaking of Jack, you just put in our back channel here that there's another loudspeaker announcement that they're clearing the orbital pad, the tank farm, and the landing pad ahead of that lift.
Oh, there we go.
Is the crane then operated remotely, or is somebody still going to be in it?
That's a great question. So usually pad clear can mean a couple of different things. It can either mean an outright evacuation of the pad, like they do for launches and fueling tests and pressurization tests, or it can basically mean all non-essential personnel get out.
Sure.
And only essential personnel are allowed in at that point. Yeah. so it can mean a couple different things. So I do not believe that crane can be operated remotely, but crane operators, if you are watching, correct me if I'm wrong, because as those words came out of my mouth, I realized that it's 2021 and maybe just
why not have one?
Yeah, and considering that our dryer just broke and we had to get a new one, and considering the baseline model Bluetooths to your phone now to tell you when your clothes are done, maybe cranes can be remote controlled now.
That's exactly what I need. I put 3,000 alarms in my phone to remember when it's done.
I know, it's actually a really good thing, but I was like, man, that's the base model.
yeah, fair.
Yeah, it's just non-essential workers they're clearing, I think. I fully expect we'll see people with taglines and people on the launch table to guide it in place and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree.
Question from Starship. We somewhat covered. Do you think the orbital pad is ready to partially fuel the Super Heavy? I think I know the answer to that one, but I'll let you guys handle it.
To partially handle it?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, perhaps no.
I mean, there's not a single GSE tank that's had a cryo
right.
on top of it. Those tanks
there's not yet fuel there.
No.
Right, there's no fuel
maybe
there.
The pad's
which is
ready,
problem.
But certainly everything else is not.
But yeah, Bart, that's sort of are all of the GSE tanks in place? No, there are still more over that are being built over at the production site, so they're not all even at the launch site yet either.
What is the eventual total that we'll have?
7 was the last I heard. Is that still the number you have, Michael?
Yeah, seven of the GSE tanks and 1 of the water tank. So that's why you see spots for 8 tanks. But if you see the rightmost silver tank, the exposed GSE tank, that shell behind it is the water tank. It does not have a GSE tank underneath it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And Cody, I think with the question, a lot of people are wondering, any window for a launch date? The answer to that is no. Not yet. I'm sure SpaceX and Elon have the date that they would really, really like to. But there is no date yet, and there's a lot that goes into sort of that answer, because there's a lot of technical work that still needs to be done on the design. I mean, like, as we're seeing, they're just now getting one for the first time onto the orbital launch mount, right? There's the GSE tanks that need to be completed and filled with fuel before you can then do fueling tests with them. The Starship is almost done, or the ship part of Starship's almost done, as we've seen over in the high bay. But, you know, there's still the stacking procedures, there's still FAA clearances, there's still environmental assessment reviews that are due. There's still just a lot of stuff, both from the regulatory side and just the physical technical side of everything, that a launch date is is not known at this point, basically.
We had a question, I googled it just to make sure. So from Trevor Selt in chat saying that, so it turns out there's actually remote controlled miniature LR 11,000 toys. That's the crane.
Huh,
so minimally there's remote controlled toy ones. So you'd think.
That's funny. You would think.
That is incredible. I did not know that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Finn, thank you so much for the new membership, and Ian and Jacoby, thank you so much as well. And to everyone who supports us, really and truly, thank you. Whether it's a super chat or a membership or just watching that ad at the beginning of of the videos, thank you so much. That it all really, really helps, and it's very much appreciated by everyone on the team. Thank you.
So Rishi Kumar asking if SpaceX can do anything to make the Starship booster land like the Falcon 9 booster. And we know that is, at this point, not the plan in any way. I don't know if that's...
Correct.
anything that they
And
could
well,
then change. But
Kind of.
yeah,
design
well,
stuff.
well, in a way, basically, it is what the Falcon 9 does from like the point of stage separation, flip around, boost back, entry burn. Did they do entry burn? Basically, the flight profile back is very, very similar, right? Of how they boost themselves back to come back to the landing site. The difference is just that the Falcon 9, in that last moment when it starts doing the landing burn, is doing the landing burn aiming for a big open concrete pad, and it just deploys landing legs and comes down that way. Whereas instead of landing legs, the booster will still be doing a landing burn. It will still be decelerating itself to kind of almost a hover, not quite, but almost a hover, and then the arms are just going to kind of come in and gently allow the grid fins to touch on there to catch it. So it's very similar until like the final moment of just specifically what thing on the ground is it that stops it? Is it the concrete on the ground, or is it the arms on the ground? Is the big sort of difference there. So and that's a great question there too. A good question from Thomas here. Is there a backup plan for if the FAA deems the Orbital Launch Integration Tower to not be environmentally friendly? No. They kind of need the tower. Not sure exactly what the environmental report will say and what the regulatory agencies will sort of make them do. Obviously, if the environmental report comes back and says it's fine, then likely they've just gambled and beaten the, and beaten the timeline a little bit there. But yeah, if they come back and say you can't have the tower, then that's a huge problem.
Out of all the things they're building, though, the
I know.
tower is like the bottom of the list of things that I think would be a problem.
Yeah, agreed, which kind of makes it funny in a way that that's the thing that got traction. Because yeah, you're also talking about storing a lot of methane there. And yeah, so yeah, but anyway, that is the answer to your question there, Thomas. Looking for another one. Yeah, Liz saying these workers are amazing. They're well over 230 feet in the air or 70 meters. What are the safety regulations like there? Basic workplace and construction safety when dealing with rocketry in that regard. Depending on what you're doing, depends on the amount of safety equipment that you have. But just like we've seen, speaking towards safety regulations, we heard Hopper, Jack and Mary heard Hopper's announcement system say that the pad would be cleared of non-essential personnel. So for the booster lift. So yeah, but other elements like tower segment lifts, the whole launch site doesn't have to clear for things like that. Just like the immediate area. If you're climbing a tower in a workplace, you wear a hard hat. You have safety tethers and things like that. But nothing like majorly different from other construction sites. Where you would really start getting that is when you start working around the hazardous materials, or if you have to access places that need clean room specifications, like you might have to be in special protective gear or things like that, just so you don't contaminate something. But again, it just kind of depends on what activity you're doing there. And Joshua as well, thank you so much for the new membership. Really, really appreciate that monthly support, as well as ZBlue. Thank you so much.
And
I pronounced the XI, but maybe it's XI Blue. I don't know. I started to
Jason
pronounce
R.
that. Yeah.
Just dropped us a $180 super chat.
Wow.
Tried dropping off snacks at Starbase on the 25th. Got eaten by mosquitoes and went home. Here's some snack money. Love you, NSF team. You're becoming a household name. Well, thank you very much. That's great. Appreciate it a bunch.
Yeah, no kidding.
My goodness.
Isn't that the easier way to drop off snacks? Is to just click a button on your computer instead of have to go fight the mosquitoes, right?
Yeah, it's way easier. Mm-hmm.
It is indeed. And Anuruddha, thank you so much for the membership, as well as TNL. Thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, and thank you so much, Thomas Enfang, thank you for that support Thank you for the support as well. And yeah. Yeah, it looks like we've got about 14,000 people watching right about now. And
Goodness. Well,
welcome to
we're
all of you.
at what, about 8 minutes now until we lift?
Well, we don't know exactly. We know that they're clearing things, but we don't know that exactly at that time they're going to do it. So I don't want people to think like, oh yeah, in exactly 8 minutes it's going. But that's when they said that they were sort of shooting for it. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
it'll happen exactly then.
That's fair.
Just set expectations.
Here's a great question from Max, saying, I've heard that the booster might not always be able to RTLS, return to launch site. If it takes off from an oil rig, would other oil rigs be used as landing platforms? And this is a really good question. Two kind of separate questions within here. Yeah. So if boosters can't RTLS, usually, what the sort of idea is that Elon has hinted at is either they always will be able to, or if they really can't based on mission specifics, there would be oil rig platforms or places downrange for them to land. So like the idea is not to chuck them away. The idea is to always have a place for them to land. However, if your launch is already happening from an oil rig and it's one of those missions where you can't come back to the oil rig because of performance requirements, your oil rigs can also be stationed in particular areas that would allow the booster to come down on land, where basically their suborbital trajectory could just arc over Florida, perhaps, and come into the Kennedy Space Center for landing. And I think Das might have something to say about that in a minute. But the point but the point is, as the system evolves, as it matures, right? Just because it's an oil rig launch doesn't mean it would have to necessarily land on another oil rig if it couldn't RTLS. You might have land options available to you, depending on where your oil rig is, your converted oil rig is.
I'm good.
Okay.
All kinds of super chats and new memberships coming in here. Just want to take a second to thank Atrello there and Flying Bear 42 for the new members. Alex Murphy also, long time watcher, first time super chatter. Thank you very much, Alex.
Yeah, and thank you, Biox, thank you so much for the support there as well. Eric as well. Yeah, it's been an incredible year since SN5 and the 150-meter hop, and it's not even 2 years yet. We're almost there, but not even 2 years since Starhopper did its 150-meter hop. So yeah, I mean, breakneck pace. Breakneck pace. Mountain Man, thank you so much for that support.
From Jimbo, a super chat here. With regards to the landings on sea platforms, is that going to be the same catch mechanisms? The launch towers are going to be constructed on those platforms?
That would be the current plan. Yep. Elon does not like having different landing systems depending on where you're going, all uniform.
Yeah,
yep.
So one of these big old towers out at sea somewhere.
Yep, that is the plan. Yeah. And Sempias, thank you so much for the support. Yeah, there's still definitely plans to launch Super Heavies and Starships from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but that does not mean that Boca Chica is going anywhere or that Starbase is going anywhere. Just that there would be a diversification of where these things are being built. And Bruce, thank you so much for the 20-pound support there. Thank you very much, and a membership as oh no, different Bruce. Oh, two Bruces in a row. Sorry, that almost got me there. So Bruce Naylor, thank you for the 20 pounds, and Bruce Fitzgerald, thank you for the new membership. Here's a good question from John. Is SpaceX waiting on an environmental assessment? SpaceX is waiting on an environmental assessment, but is there a temporary waiver they can request for a one-time launch in the meantime? I don't believe it works that way. I believe the environmental impact assessment for the orbital stuff needs to be complete before there would be formal approval to continue on. I don't believe you. I don't, or at least I should say, I have never seen a situation develop where they ask for a waiver before the environmental assessment is complete. I hope that answers your question.
From
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say again, it's sort of the thinking is that this whole FAA letter environmental assessment thing has been a little bit overblown. That like some people looking for some clicks out there, blowing it up a little bit more than it may actually impact things. So, of course, it's a normal part of the process that they go through. We think that it's not going to have a huge impact. I always could see, you know. But a lot of people, I think that it's a little bit overblown. Everybody loves talking about it because everybody loves dunking on the FAA, but I just don't know that it's going to be as much of an issue as people blow it up to be. That's my hope, at least, right?
No. I think you're exactly right. I think the thing that sort of brings it to attention is the fact that they built something technically before it was done.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, environmental assessments have already been done of the Boca Chica area. You know, we know how environmental assessments have worked at Vandenberg when they wanted to return to launch site the Falcon 9, but there was, you know, seal breeding season. And they had to figure out, you know, but like ultimately the decision was yes, RTLS landings can happen at Vandenberg. Ultimately the decision was yes, polar launches can take place out of Florida at increased rates, you know, as we're going. And even an environmental assessment impact report about the sonic boom element that would be imparted onto the Central Florida area for Starship's landing back at the for ships landing back at the Kennedy Space Center, and all of that went through its regulatory approval. Very rarely does the environmental impact report come back and go no.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's a paperwork process. It's making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and stuff like that. But
A
a lot of people are interested in it, you know.
It is, and you know, but it also goes back to that relationship that space exploration has with land conservation and environmental issues, right? And you know, these sites in the U.S. tend to be on wildlife preserves or wildlife refuges, not just for their seclusion, right, which provides greater safety for humans in the area, but it also means that a lot of that land will never be developed and will always be there, right? So it is an interesting balancing act, and like all compromises, no one party usually comes away completely happy, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, folks, if you're just joining us here, we've got a couple different camera angles. All this is coming at you live from Boca Chica, Texas, down there at Starbase. We're the NASA spaceflight team, and we are waiting for a potential lift of Booster 4 for the first time ever. Historic event trying to put Booster 4 on the orbital launch mount. So that's what we're doing. We're doing some Q&A, answering some questions. Thanking you for some support. In the meantime, we do not have an exact number for when the lift may happen. We can't tell you, oh, it's 8 minutes or 10 minutes or 12 minutes or anything like that. But we're here hanging out with you because we hope that shortly, if everything's looking good, we may see the crane-assisted takeoff of Booster 4. I like saying it.
I really do too. Kato, right?
Yeah.
Kato.
Kato, exactly. We're getting a lot of questions about this. It's not Starship related, but I do just want to hit this question very, very quickly because a lot of people are asking if we're going to be covering the Starliner launch today. Starliner's not going anywhere today. Starliner has been delayed indefinitely per the latest update from Boeing. They were able to successfully cycle some things on the Starliner propellant valve system after the scrub yesterday, but Atlas is going back into the vertical integration facility where teams, according to the latest Boeing update, can have better access to the spacecraft for troubleshooting. That is the most recent public information on where Starliner stands, so it does not currently have a target launch date. So I just had a lot of questions in chat that we were getting about that, so just wanted to hit that really, really quick for everyone. We're not missing Starliner. It's not launching today.
Yeah. Of course, we're covering it whenever it ends up launching.
Yes. Basically, it seems determined that I'm not going to Boca anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much what that seems. But yeah, all joking aside, Shane, thank you so much for the new membership. Trello, thank you for the support. as well. And Tarek with a membership, thank you so much. All of the support is wonderfully appreciated.
From Chris Brown, and we had a super chat now. Do you think they're going to cryo test and static fire the SN20 on the suborbital pad and booster 4 on the orbital launch pad before stacking the both of them together? Great coverage, super clear audio and visuals, and brilliant discussions. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome, thank you. Before they stack them together, no. I think the plan is to get I think the plan is to get booster 4 on the orbital launch table today. Obviously, we know it should be actually pretty imminent right now based on when Starhopper announced the intended lift time, or the anticipated lift time. But we also expect that ship 20 will roll out here very soon. Don't know the timing of that yet, but we expect it to roll very soon and go to the orbital pad as well for stacking. And the reason we think this is because suborbital pad A is still occupied by booster 3, so ship 20 can't go there. And suborbital pad B has had the sort of thrust simulation structures installed on it, which means that the vacuum Raptors can't be in there when it's there. So we don't think it's going to pad B, which means that the only option is to send it to the orbital pad first. And this makes sense for a variety of reasons. One, we know that Elon wants the stack, right? We know that Elon is pushing for that full stack for the PR element of it, for the the worker morale of seeing their hard work there.
He made a bet with somebody or something.
Well, he probably made a bet with somebody too.
I mean, August 5th, yeah, like.
well, I also was going to say, and also Elon just wants to see it, so
yeah,
it's
exactly.
so that there's that reason as well. But Das, you were sort of making the point earlier that there's also a lot that they can learn from a technical standpoint, from a practicing their procedure standpoint, from a maybe we need to tweak this thing and better we found it now than 2 days before we're trying to launch.
Yeah, this is something that I've been saying for a very long time. Building the rockets isn't that big of a deal. It's certainly complicated, but you also have to build all the infrastructure. You have to learn how to put them together. You have to learn how to move them. You have to learn how to stack them. You have to get the tower built and the mount built and all that sort of the GSE that carries everything. It's not just about being able to put together a rocket and tossing it out on a pad that already exists. Elon was saying when he was talking with Tim that it's just as hard to build all of this infrastructure, actually harder to build this infrastructure than it is to build the rocket itself. And we've been talking about that for a while. So everything they do here, it's being done for the first time. First time they take the super heavy booster and put it on the orbital launch mount right there in front of the tower on the left-hand side. First time they take a Starship and put it up on top of a booster while it's out there. And every time they do that, they're going to be learning. They're going to be getting new information. They're going to be figuring out the process. How do they do it safely? How do they do it quickly? Because they want these fast turnaround times. And so every time they do this, it's like a practice run. It's important for them to be able to do this, even if it doesn't end up in a static fire or a flight-worthy booster or anything like that. They have to learn the processes so that they can improve on them, just like you, optimize the vacuum ISP of the Raptor. Like, that's super important. But being able to put a Starship on top of a booster is even more important, right?
Right. right. Because you don't get to orbit without that. Right?
Exactly. Like, we just all love to get so deeply involved in the technical details. What's the exact mass of the booster, and what's the fuel mix, and all these technical questions, and none of that matters if you can't actually launch the thing from infrastructure that you've put together to support it.
Right.
Very quick, we got from a super chat from Mansour Bahabari. That's 80 Australian, which is about 60 US, if I recall. You're covering an amazing time in history. Thanks, and I can't wait for the launch. Mansour, thank you very, very much for the huge support.
Indeed, thank you so much. And Josh, and Das, we have a question from Josh here that I think is for you. Are you going to make another KSP simulation of Starship orbit like you did for Blue Origin's New Shepard and show us? And I love that people remember this. I was actually watching some of the KSP discussion threads when we
Yeah.
did that, and people really loved that. And it seemed, yeah.
It's one of those time things. Like, I would love to go and do simulations in KSP of all the stuff. That's what I did before we got into the robotic cameras and the live coverage and all that sort of stuff. I used to simulate it in KSP. Like, every single launch, I would go through and like, oh, okay, let's build an Atlas in the 551 configuration or whatever, and then we'd do it in KSP. We'd learn about the launch. I just don't have time anymore. There's no way. So if there are any avid Kerbal players out there, my DMs are open. Like, maybe that would be a cool thing to work with somebody else who loves Kerbal, who could put together a little simulation for us we could show.
It really would. I would love to use Kerbal KSP in some way in our streams, like to help visualize what is going on and what's happening during certain phases of flight. I would really love it. Yeah. So yeah,
You can keep
let us
that
know.
in mind.
Yeah, exactly. DK, I don't know.
Yeah,
what
DK.
Yeah. Oh, that's how I know DOS. I actually know him before NASASpaceflight from Kerbal.
Yeah. Old
Streaming
school
on Twitch.
7 years. What, 7 years ago or something?
I don't
like
want to
that,
talk about it.
Oh my, was that like case? I don't mean this like for any way other than like that game increased so much and updated so much. That was like back in the like KSP 0.1 days,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, even for me, who like I've loved space and space exploration my whole life, but I didn't have an understanding of orbital mechanics quite like I did once I was able to actually play with it.
Right.
It's
exactly.
fantastic. It's incredible.
Yep.
Exactly. And I love that there's a story that Tim tells very, very well about when he was over in Southeast Asia, either in Myanmar, I think Myanmar or Thailand, and he was playing it, and this kid came up, and they did not speak the same language, but they were able to communicate through that game.
Yep.
No
And
kidding.
that kid was, and like
Goodness.
it's a great story. It's a great
Yeah.
story about like all the different ways that game is not a game, but is, but yeah.
We get so we do the museum shows up in New York. We used to before COVID, and we would set up a Kerbal booth where it was like, come and play Kerbal with us. And we had some volunteers from my Twitch stream, and my buddy EJ was there, and we'd have people just able to walk up and play the game with us. So of course, this is all before COVID. We're passing around Xbox controllers and everything, right? And we would set up multiple stations. We'd have a PC station, we'd have all these different scenarios. We'd have a console station, fly a plane, land on the moon, launch a rocket, and a Kerbal instructor, like one of the volunteers, one of the friends that I had just from Twitch, would sit there with people visiting the museum and explain, like, oh, in a rocket launch, here we're launching, this is why we go to the east. Where's the booster going to fall? When you press the space bar and you point down, it's falling into the water, and the kid will be like, oh, the water. And it's like, do you want that to fall on your house, or do you want it to fall in the water? And we would sit there and just play Kerbal with kids and families, and I guarantee, we don't need to get too far into Kerbal, but I guarantee you, my name is Kerbal Space Academy anyways.
I was going to say.
Sorry. But we'd get there, and the parents would walk up, and they don't know what Kerbal is. And they're just like, oh, another booth. All right. I'm going to just let the kids sit down here for a second, and I'm going to get over here on my phone and, walking around the museum. And without fail, halfway through the rocket launch, the parent is there leaning over, asking questions. They're like, oh, this is just a video game. And the parent gets involved. And all of our instructors like, oh, you actually have to learn some physics to play this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just
Well,
such
and you
a
did such a good job of making it a science communication like vehicle. It's incredible. I loved it.
It's so much fun. It's such a good tool. If y'all don't know what Kerbal Space Program is, it's a video game. It's on console, it's on PC, Xbox, PS4, yada yada yada, and you build your own rockets basically. But it's not like tap to get to orbit or swipe or insert microtransactions to fuel your rocket. Nothing like that.
I'm playing it tonight.
There you go.
I can't do it.
Hashtag influencing.
Yeah.
But it is a video game, and you build your own rockets, and it's just a lot of fun. Like, if you play enough Kerbal, you get an understanding for what it takes to actually get things into orbit. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or anything like that, but
no,
it's a lot of fun.
But you know what I love too, and last thing on it is that Tory Bruno, the CEO of ULA, loves that game. And there are stories about how he encourages ULA employees to go play it. Go get used to how your little component affects the entire mission. Like,
Yep.
it's amazing. Yeah.
It's problem solving. It's like thinking through things. It's not just a video game. It's like in order to do things in the game, you design your mission. And you have to think about, well, how am I going to control the rocket? How's it going to fly? What do I need to take with me? How much fuel does it need? Like all the things, you design your own mission. It's really cool. Anyways, this has become an advertisement for Kerbal Space Program.
No, you're
Available on PC and Xbox. PC and console play.
We had a really great super chat from James Powers here. My dad was in middle school during the Mercury program and watched history being made as a young man. Now he and I get to watch this process together, thanks to the NSF crew for bringing his childhood back. And that's fantastic. That's incredible.
That is, I have yes, and cherish that. I have such fond memories of, but my dad got me involved in space exploration because he just happened to be driving through Brevard County on the day that Apollo 11 launched, and once he saw that, never stopped.
Sure.
And yeah, cherish those times because those are the memories I love.
Yep. Those are some of we get all sorts of messages, y'all, and when people give us personal experiences like that, you open up and you decide to share that with us. That really does mean a lot. Like saying that we're able to bring someone's childhood back, or spark an imagination, or spark an interest in space or science or anything like that. That really does mean a lot to us. Like, thank you so much, James, for sharing that with us. That's really cool.
It's so fantastic to hear that. And I mean, from a personal note, like I don't know how many times I've asked my parents about the summer of 1969, like with the Apollo launches and all of it. It's incredible I'm sure it's incredible to have been there then, and now we have this now, and it's exciting.
So is.
Yeah.
It so is.
So people are asking what the orange thing is on screen on the left side right now. Do we know what that is?
I have a better question. Where is that in actual relation to the booster? Because I think that's the first question I need answered.
It looks like
So that's
way
the
in front.
cryo shell on the left-hand side. That's the cryo shell,
okay.
or the water tank, and this is the condensers right in front of it. You can see big motors. It looks like. And then that the orange thing looks like it's connected to a header on that pipe. So that GSE equipment, I see a blind down there underneath the tent, and that doesn't. I don't know if that just lines up. Is that a blind with the pipe? A blind is just the end of the pipe where you bolt it down to close the pipe off. Or is that something coming up out of the top? Is that some sort of expansion chamber? It looks like it's got a motor on top. Is it some sort of pump? Can anybody identify that?
Pressurized?
Is that a big
help
valve,
us out,
maybe?
chat. Yeah.
Like, maybe that
But
the pipe going
it's
down is a valve.
no part of the lift today is what.
Yes, it is part of the GSE. It's close to the camera, and we're sort of looking past it to see the Raptors and that sort of stuff. There is the GSE farm. You can see the lines going and stuff like that. A little relief bend in the line there. I wonder if that's one of the expansion joints where you
think
do
it
a little
is,
bend
right?
like that. Yeah, because the temperature of these pipes changes drastically. It goes from super cold, right? Because you got cryogenic liquids in it, and then it empties out and it heats up in the Texas sun. And so you have these wild temperature strings. And if you know how ice works, have you ever left a soda can in the freezer? You don't have a cold soda and you really need a soda really fast, so you put it in the freezer, but then you go over and you start watching Starbase Live and you forget about the soda in the freezer, and you go back and your entire freezer just exploded with soda because, well, it expanded when it froze. And so that same thing. Go ahead.
This is why we need Bluetooth fridges, so it will tell you when your soda is appropriately chilled in the freezer.
Soda cans, like your soda can detects or reports to your phone the current temperature. But sometimes we see the bend in the pipe because these pipes have thermal expansion and contraction. And as they heat up, they get a little bit longer, and as they cool down, they get a little bit shorter because they just naturally expand and contract with the temperature. And sometimes our understanding is, and I don't know that specific U was this thing, I'm sort of guessing based on what I know, but we see little turns in the pipes like that, and that allows them a little bit more flexibility when they're going through these big thermal expansion changes. And you see it on the sides of the GSE tanks. We just saw it there, the little king of the pipe. Now, that could be like a service access or something like that. I'm sort of just guessing at what I think I saw there. I want to be very clear with that. But we know that the pipes heat up and cool down. So that's sort of what that might have been. And I really hope, like, it's important to me to be accurate and stuff like that. And we don't have the engineer that installed that, or oh yeah, I've done 20 years in the oil fields, and that's exactly what that's for. But I'm sort of guessing based on what I would think would be common sense. That may not be what that little bend is for. It really gets on my nerves when people hop on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, actually, that's exactly how it works. And they don't actually know. They're just like giving you information that's their guess. Like when I'm guessing, I want y'all to know that I'm guessing. I made that up.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
There you go. Wolfram with a $50 super chat. Just saying thanks for the great coverage, guys. But I like this one because it said for the Gator Defense Fund. Oh wait, this is Texas. For the Robo Horde.
There you go. The Robo Horde.
But yes, the Florida contingent does appreciate the Gator Defense Fund as well. Yes. And Gunnar, thanks for the new membership, and Eric as well. Thank you for the new membership. And a couple of quick ones here that I've got, DK. So Donnie was asking, what purpose did Booster 3 serve? Booster 3 is a test booster, so it was a cryo-proof, like haul it out there, do some thrust puck testing, do some ambient ground testing, just basically verify the design that you had for 4. Is what 3's role was for. And then, where was the other one? Oh, yeah, and then Jamie with a good question here, too. Oh, yeah, what?
No, I was curious. So is Booster 3 then a trophy, or is it going to be repurposed in any kind of way? Or
probably a trophy at this point, if I had to guess, because the design keeps changing. No, not the first one at all.
We at Space, Boca Chica likes trophies.
Yes, flown and unflown trophies as well. No, the design is changing too much. It's almost not worth. Like unless there was some weird thing of like, oh, we want it to do the hypersonic testing of SN16, which who even knows if that's a thing still. That's just the latest thing Elon said about Ship 16. Maybe, but no, my guess is it's probably done, and it's probably just waiting for its turn in the shuffle back from the orbital launch site. But who knows? There could be additional testing they want to do on it, but they haven't done anything in a while with it. So
real quick question on this view. A couple people asking what the orange flag or somebody crashed a life raft into it. I believe that is like a tarp, and they're doing some welding in that area. And every now and then we see like a tarp for sunshade for workers, or also some closer in tarps sometimes for protecting the shielding gases of the welding that's going on. So I don't think that is a life raft that was crashed into the tower by a large wave. I think that's just a tarp that they've strung up to get some shade, if I'm not mistaken. We see that on occasion.
Gotcha. Daniel, thank you so much. See, now I want tacos for lunch, since you mentioned tacos in the super chat. So, see, I got to figure out my lunch order now. Thank you.
Stop talking about food.
Noted, Jack. We will stop. Spruce, thank you so much for the new membership as well. And here's another question from Jamie saying, will B4 need to be pressurized when a Starship is stacked on top of it? So to answer your first question first here, Jamie, yes, it will. In fact, it's somewhat pressurized right now. Come on, go on screen. It's somewhat pressurized right now. You can see some of the green hoses feeding into it for pressurization support for those tanks. So yes, it will be pressurized when they stack Starship, and it's kind of pressurized right now as well. And then another great question here, with 5 euros asking, don't they have to remove the green hoses when sitting the booster on the table? I would assume that I would assume no, but I'm gonna say that assumption based on I don't know how long the hoses are. They might be long enough to allow for the lift up, and then they disconnect them once it's there and close enough to the other pressurization systems that would either run up through the orbital launch mount, or before they would reposition those temporary ones. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but I don't know if they have to remove them to lift it, is my point.
We saw them lift Booster 3, and
right.
I don't. Maybe I just don't recall, like something that we didn't see or didn't have the angle on or something. But I don't recall them leaving pressurization hoses attached to the booster itself during the lift of 3. I'm actually going to go and look at the video and see if I can find it.
Please do.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing in my head that says, oh, well, they would have to leave them on, and there's also nothing that would say, oh, they can't take them off. Yeah,
I'm literally going to go back and I'm going to roll back the tape on the previous lift and see if we observed any hoses like that. That is a really good. That's a really good observation.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And thanks for zooming in on that, Jack. There, but yeah, we'll go check and see what we see on Booster 3. But yeah, I don't know if they have to remove them, but we're going to go check to see if they did on Booster 3. So hold tight there, and we'll get you the Booster 3 answer to that question.
Good grief, we do a lot of videos. I'm scrolling back trying to find the video, and I'm like, why are there 100 videos between now and Booster 3?
Paul here with a good question while we go search for that the pressurization line removal question. Paul asking, looking at the grid fin config, that's harder to say than I thought it would be. How will they make sure the booster lands the right way around, i.e. with the fins at their widest? Okay, so not how the fins move up and down, because we know they don't, but they actuate from side to side. Yeah, so that would be part of the logic of the system, right? Is that the landing configuration, once the engine relights for the landing burn, is to put the grid fins into, basically full out horizontal 90-degree for the catch. Is how that would work, because the grid fins do need to be able to adjust and move and wiggle around some, to a bit there, because hang on, I've got the requirements, because each grid fin is approximately 3 tons. They don't retract. But they are driven by Tesla 3 motors, and the fin batteries are way overpowered for what they need right now, based on some of the things that Elon told Tim in his latest video walkabout with Elon there. So yeah, but good question there. Yeah, it's all part of the commanding logic in them, and when they would transition and snap to landing configuration, as opposed to let me help guide the booster in configuration. Any questions striking your fancy, DK?
Yeah, I just picked up one here from chat. If the FAA says Starship and Super Heavy will only launch from seed launch platforms, how will they get them to the platforms, especially the one in Mississippi? I don't know about that one, but
yes. So that's a great question. There. Bottom line, they will simply haul wherever they are built, right? So let's just keep with Starbase right now. When they need to launch the actual mission from a converted oil rig platform, what they will do is they will launch the ship and the booster from Boca Chica and just launch them suborbitally to the oil rig. That's what Elon said. So that's the easiest way to do it. Build them here and then fly them where they need to go. And in many ways, I mean, we keep talking about this in terms of airline. But, when Delta Airlines orders a new aircraft from Airbus, let's say Airbus doesn't build a production site at the Daytona International Airport because that's the first place that plane is going to fly from. They're built in production facilities, and then they're flown and delivered to the airlines. So kind of a similar thing. They're built one place, and then instead of hauling them across the country, like the Falcon 9s to their launch site, they're simply fired up on the pad and flown out to their locations. At least per the latest update from Elon. Yeah. We'll see if that's changed. GNP and Mira, thank you so much for the new membership, as well as FL. Thank you. So thank you, Florida, for the new membership. Sponsored by my state, FL.
All of Florida.
All of Florida.
Whole thing.
No, but joking aside, thank you, FL. Thank you for the membership. Really appreciate it. And DK, yeah, I think I cut you off there by accident.
No, you're good. I lost the question, to be honest.
Really quickly,
auto-scrolled.
I can talk a little bit more about the green hoses. I actually rolled back the tape.
Perfect.
And here is a shot of the lift of Booster 3. And you can see there are taglines on the bottom, but there are no green hoses down on the bottom of it. So when they lifted Booster 3, it's a little bit of a wide shot because you're doing the whole thing, but I don't see any hoses down there on the bottom of it. So that might, now, are they changing the process? Are they trying something new? That might be an indication, but if we see somebody go up there and disconnect those hoses, that might be a sign that they're going forward. Again, they might be able to lift it with it, but when they did Booster 3 onto suborbital Pad A, you can see the transport stand, you can see Pad A with the adapter there, and it did not seem to have those big green pressurization hoses, if they're pressurization, the big green hoses. There you go.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
So if they haven't changed the process, we'll see someone go up and take those off.
Exactly. Yeah. Or we may see that they changed the process. Either way, we'll find out.
Oh, the lift is going back up. Look at that.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right.
Must have to check on something up there.
Yeah. Also, we do have some questions here about how will they unhook Ship 20 from Frankencrane once it's stacked on top of B4 on the orbital launch platform. I don't think a man lift will reach that high. And then also great work and thank you for all of your coverage. Yeah, I mean, there will have to be some form of a crane and a bucket that takes someone over to unhook them, unless they have an as yet unseen way of lifting the nose cone for the mate to Starship. Yeah, there are attach points that will either need to be cut and removed, or TPS, thermal protection system closeouts, that will be needed unless they have made those attach points out of material that can survive atmospheric reentry without a heat shield.
We've seen some close-ups of that. So we've seen some close-ups of the big attach points sticking out of the side of the nose cone. At the last photo I saw, the TPS tiles were just sort of around it. They weren't. Right. It was an open hole around it right now. So exactly how they're going to do that, I think remains to be seen.
Yeah, because on past ships, right, where the sort of lifting attach points, right, for the cranes had to go through thermal protection system, you were side mounting that vehicle, and it's the shuttle. Surprise, everyone! Who thought I wasn't going to say that name? But they had the added benefit of being in the vehicle assembly building, where like gigantic work platforms could come and cocoon the thing, right, and you could have easier access, and even out at the launch pad. With the huge rotating server structure, you could get to places and repair TPS relatively easy. There's no such thing here. So that's really going to be one of those fascinating things, which I know yesterday we were talking about this, and I said, like, that's something I'm really excited to see how they do it, because that is a very good question, and there are just a few different ways they could handle it. So very interested in seeing how they do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's inevitable that they get to an automated attach system like we see with the Falcon 9s at Port Canaveral. I hope we see a Falcon 9 in Port Canaveral sometime soon. It's been a while since we've actually seen this on Fleet Cam, but at Port Canaveral they actually have a fully automated lifting cap system. And it's got solar panels, it's got batteries on it, it's got automated pins that sort of attach, and it's got a bunch of cameras on it. And the crane operator just lifts this. It's literally like a robotic attach point. They lift it up to the top of the booster, they position it, they let it down, and then they literally just hit a button, and it connects everything it needs to hit, right? Or it connects everything that needs to be connected, and without having a lift go up to the top of the booster, they can lift it, move it over, hit a button. I'm sure it's more than just hitting one button. Like, there's probably a safety lockout. You have to flip open a cap or something like that to get to the button, like an abort sequence. But then they do this, and it disconnects automatically without having to have a person go up there. I think it's inevitable with the turnaround times that Elon wants. You start to see a system like that operating for the Super Heavies. None of these lifts going up to the top, and human beings having to attach and detach things. It's literally just the crane goes over, it goes down, something automated happens, and it lines up, and it puts pins in or whatever, and then they lift it up, and they hit another button, and it disconnects itself. I bet you we're going to see that in the future for automated attach and detach.
Sure. Otherwise, in chat, somebody said jetpacks, which, you know, also a possibility. No. Musical Wolves asked a question a couple times here, asking if Starship 20 is going to have a static fire before B4, or if B4 is going to have the static test before Starship 20.
no clue which one static fires first.
Right.
The only thing we're fairly confident on, based on things that Elon has said and where and how everything seems to be configured, is that Ship 20 will be stacked onto Booster 4 first, and then they will likely do their static fire campaigns. That's pretty much all we know at this point. It's a really good question, though. Yeah.
We would also like to know. Put it that way.
Very, very true as well. I like this one from Doc Watson to don't say shuttle 3 times in a row, or it will summon Chris B to appear. Well, it does, yes. Here, let me. Oh, here's a good question from Tarek. Asking. Oh, Tarek, I think you just upped or became a channel member too, and now with a super chat as well. Thank you. Tarek is asking, will a non-orbital Starship, i.e., 15 and 16, be able to travel site to site without the booster, or is the booster necessary for all flights? That's a great question. These ships can do certain suborbital trajectories without the booster. It just depends how far downrange they're going, how much they're, and how much they can carry when they have to do the entirety of the lift with their 3 Raptor engines. But they are capable of doing some point-to-point travel without the booster.
I actually have a question with the vacuum engines that Rhino put up here too, and maybe we'll be able to speak to that quickly. Do you static fire vacuum engines? How are those tested, since they're optimized for use in the vacuum of space?
Oh, yes. So the nozzles are optimized for the vacuum of space, but you can fire and ignite a vacuum optimized engine at sea level.
Yeah, so they just have a... Yeah, exactly. They're just not very efficient at sea level.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they still fire up just fine. Yeah. In
fact, they'll static fire better.
Well, I was going to say, in fact, a lot of times you see, you actually see vacuum optimized engines, in some cases, tested without the nozzle, because it's the nozzle expansion that optimizes them, and that really, really optimizes them for the flow in that regard. So sometimes you'll actually see vacuum optimized engines tested without the nozzle. Not this case, because they have the nozzles, because they're in Starship right now. The vacuum Raptors have been installed in Ship 20. But yeah, let's just hook them up to a propellant source and fire them up.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Simplified that significantly, but yeah.
Man, just plug them in and go. Is that a bag? Some wires?
Looks like a dent on the left side there.
AVI, is that a camera? Camera
Yeah.
gear? I don't know what AVI means. Yeah.
Avionics.
Oh,
that
there
makes
you
sense.
go. Avionics. Jack chimed in. I want it to be a camera.
Yeah, same, right?
Oh, man.
That's what
Yeah,
AVI means
sorry.
for me.
Man, the joke that just popped into my head is like someone watching that and going, oh, man, Charlie, that's where we left it.
Let's see. Travis coming in with a new membership. Thank you very much, Travis, for the continued monthly support.
And Pempelak, thank you for the support as well there. Very much appreciated. And a new membership from ATP Torfan?
ATP?
Sure.
Yeah.
ATP Torfan. See, I always try to pronounce things. That's my downfall here. Like, to prevent structural damage. Oh, here's a good question from Brent. Ooh, I love that name, Brent. Is in the event of significant weather, what contingencies / structural engineering is in place to prevent structural damage or mitigate that as much as possible? To the rocket, I mean, well, so we know the boosters can be hit by lightning and be just fine. Seen that happen a couple times on our 24/7 stakeout cams. In terms of like really, really significant weather, like a hurricane is coming, really what you do is you just secure as best as you can, and then you just really hope for not a direct hit. Certain things are definitely built to withstand that in terms of the wind force. However, the other thing at Boca Chica and Starbase that's a big consideration. And Das, I know you've been there, so you could talk about this personally as well. Starbase is basically at 1 foot above sea level.
Yeah, sea level basically.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, portions of that place flood at high tide, and just regular high tides.
Yep.
So the storm surge from landfalling hurricanes is one of the things that I would say is the biggest threat to that area, just because of how low it is. The structures themselves can be built to withstand Category 5 impacts, which a lot of the new building codes actually just flat out mandate for any structure. But it's the storm surge that would be the problem.
Yeah, the storm surge is the thing you can't do anything about. You can make the tower stronger, you can make the footings lower, but you cannot stop the sea from rising up and just flooding everything around there, literally washing things away. As a kid, when I was growing up, I used to go to North Padre Island. So there's a channel, and there's South Padre Island down there, and then go up and you're on North Padre Island. And we had a hurricane come through that literally cut the island in half. So you'd be driving down towards Big Shell, and you end up, all right, we get all the way down here to the end of the island, and a hurricane came through and literally cut the island in half. And one day, friends were driving down, and they're like, what is this? The ocean's not supposed to be here. There's a huge channel where there wasn't a channel before after that hurricane came through. So the flow of water is really one of the most damaging things right there on the coast. There's not much you can do to mitigate it. Like, oh, dig a canal, put up a levee. Like, you're fighting the entire ocean. It's it's not how it works. So
and you know, storm surges are usually the most dangerous parts of in many cases the most dangerous parts of the storm, because people underestimate. Like, they think 7 feet. Oh, that's nothing. No, it's 7 feet in every direction
of the ocean.
Like, you're not you're not sandbagging that. You know, to stop that. No, that really becomes the most dangerous part for some of these storms now.
Yep, and that's a risk that SpaceX had to identify and just accept, putting it there on the Gulf Coast. Gulf Coast gets hit by hurricanes. I grew up in Corpus Christi my entire life. My parents lost their house before I was born to a hurricane. Literally destroyed everything they had. And when you live on the Gulf Coast down there, I know Florida's the same, Chris. That is a risk that you live with every day of hurricane season.
Yep.
I remember,
especially in Florida, where it's like, is it coming from the west, the east, or the south? Like,
so much more exposed out there in Florida.
Oh,
like, you can get hit from every side. I remember evacuating. We had an RV when I was a kid, and when a hurricane was coming, we would pack up our 2 cars. We'd tow the RV with the truck, and we'd go north up past Austin. We'd go camping for a couple days or a long weekend, and you know, we had the opportunity to turn it into sort of a family trip. Not everybody can do that. But one of the memories from being a really, really young kid, I remember evacuating when hurricanes were coming into Corpus Christi. So,
100%. Yeah, I mean, because in Florida it's slightly weirder, because like we have the, like, if we evacuate, we have to go north, and everyone has to go north. Like, there's no way to spread out the evacuation. It's a chokehold trying to get out of here. So like there is that funny thing in Florida where it's like, oh, if it's a 1 or 2 or 3, it's a hurricane party. Get your supplies, get your beer, and you know, you'll be fine. Except what we've had the last few times is they tell us it's going to be a 1, and then it's 180-mile-an-hour Category 5, second strongest ever recorded, and you're like, oh,
really? There's a reason they call it the spaghetti model, Chris. Like,
no, which is what I pay attention to. Yes, and look at the options. But anyway. Hurricanes aside,
got a lot of hurricane stories. Yeah, we can tell hurricane stories for days.
Super chat from Sugar and Magic asking if Super Heavy is going to get an FTS, a flight termination system, or is Starship sufficient to abort the flight?
Both pieces, I would think, right?
Yeah. So both. I think during the initial test campaigns, both get it. And they would both get and right now it's and you know, SpaceX likes automated. There's manual triggers on them right now for the test campaign as well. But yeah, both will get FTSs for the test campaign. However, if we ever get to a variant of ship that is solely a crew carrying vehicle, we'll have to see how all of that works out in terms of the finalized design. But you do not put flight termination systems on the crewed portions of the vehicle.
Interesting.
For obvious reasons.
There's no escape pod. There's no escape system. There's no abort
Correct.
system for Starship.
Correct, and I know Elon's been a bit cagey about answering that particular question, and definitely there isn't one now as part of the current design, although they might be thinking about it, they might be working about it, but that's why I kind of hedged and said whatever the final one is. Yeah, because like and if you go back like and you look at the Falcon 9, right? The first and second stages of the Falcon 9 have automated flight termination systems. Dragon doesn't.
No
Because you don't
way.
want to blow up the capsule with people.
Yeah.
Right. All the elements of the SLS rocket have flight termination, but Orion doesn't. The same with the Atlas V and Starliner. So that's where Starship becomes a slightly different animal because it is both your second stage and the crew vehicle. So basically, the default to this would be what they did with the space shuttle, where the tank and the boosters had flight termination, but the orbiter did not.
Yeah.
But if they find a way to pop the crew cabin out in some way and make that viable, then maybe Starship does. So yeah, it all come down to the final design of the crew vehicle as to where the FTS goes for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's something I had never really thought about. The flight termination system, you certainly don't strap explosives to the side of the capsule that has your crew in it, right?
Yeah.
And if you wanted to think about it, the flight termination system for the capsule is actually a huge set of rocket motors that takes it off the top, right? Mm-hmm. On Dragon, the flight termination system is actually the abort motors that make it fly off the top of the rocket to safety. It doesn't blow up the capsule. It actually gets it away from everything else that's blowing up or potentially blowing up. So I had never really thought about that with Starship. But you're right, Chris. For Shuttle, clearly Shuttle didn't have explosives strapped to the side. They blew the whole thing up just in case something went wrong. It'll be really interesting to see where they settle on that,
Yeah, it really will.
Right quick from Rene Rodriguez, we actually had a $50 super chat. No question or anything, just some support. Thank you very much, Rene. And then also some new members from Wayne and Michael Mergens. Thank you guys very much, both, for the continued support. From Roy Kaplan, I've seen him ask it a couple times now, so we're going to get to it. We talked about it yesterday, but will the grid fins be used for attitude control at all?
Not during ascent, but
during ascent.
Descent.
Excuse me. Yes.
So not during ascent, but during descent. Yes.
Yeah. So that was a thing. Elon actually said this when he was talking with Tim, and this is sort of what we've been saying for a while. In their position they're in right now, the grid fins are sort of feathered. When they're pointing straight up and down, and that's weird because they're like a waffle iron, right? Right now, the grid fins are pointing straight up and down. You're like, wait, no, they need to turn 90 degrees. No, they're pointing so that the airflow, the impact on the airflow is minimized right now. And that's exactly what Elon confirmed when he was talking to Tim. The grid fins aren't that big of a deal when they're in this position. It's when they start to get a little bit of an angle of attack, when they rotate, or when the booster's flying off exactly straight forward a little bit, at a little bit of an angle of attack. That's when they start to have effects. But when they're in this position, just straight up and down, they don't really affect the aerodynamics that much. And that was sort of something we've been saying for a while, and that's exactly what Elon said to Tim. It's not really a huge concern.
Indeed. And we did talk about it a little bit, and one of the reasons they're not going to change their orientation during flight, even though they could during ascent, is that they could be used to sort of change where the main pressure point is on the vehicle, but that's not really needed within the Starship design.
Right.
But they could theoretically be used to do that. They're just not really needed to do that with the design.
Yep.
And Chard with support here asking, do you know what the status of the new tank farm is? Is there enough capacity to fill B4 and S20 with the tanks that are out there now? Okay, well, capacity-wise, based on the final plan, yes, there would be enough to fill them all. However, only 3 of the 7 are currently there, and none of them have propellant in them right now. So the current status of the orbital launch site tank farm is, look at the nice big shiny containers that will one day hold propellant.
Right.
But they don't, and they're not useful right now because they don't have any propellant inside of them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Hey, real quick status update here, y'all.
Yes, go for it. Yeah.
Let me talk about what we're seeing. I know we're answering some questions and stuff, but we saw them attach the crane, the load spreader. It's the triangle thing up at the top of the booster. That is attached to the top of the booster right now. 2 hard points up at the top where it's attached. And we saw the big lift. You see the crazy carnival ride lift that's taller than the booster. We know that that was up at the top when they attached it. We saw that come all the way down. There's a great angle from Mary's shot. You can see that lift with the people up on top of it. We saw that come all the way down, and then we saw it go all the way back up again. So has there been something, did they think they were ready for the lift and they started to tension things up, they started to put the load on the crane, maybe they saw something, the crane felt something, somebody heard something, and they've sent that lift back up there. It looks like it's inspecting either the straps or the block or something like that up near the top of the booster. So we can't tell you exactly when the lift is going to happen. It's the first time they've done this. It's the first time they've lifted the booster all the way up to the orbital launch platform. And so we are going to have to see what happens here.
Yeah, and just in case you're just joining us and missed this, we didn't go live just to be live the entire day. There were indications that it was somewhat imminent. In fact, even Starhopper's announcement system yelled 30 minutes about an hour ago. So something clearly delayed them, because it was roughly about 10 a.m. I think was when the lift was anticipated based on Starhopper's announcement, or shortly thereafter. So something did delay them, but that's why we went live when we did. And yeah, we see that boom, like you were just saying there, DOS up at the top. So hopefully that's an indication that some things might be getting ready to recommence here. And you can still see workers working around the base. There's someone down near one of the engines there, off to the left-hand side.
Most likely an inspection. To bring the lift all the way down and then to send the lift all the way back up, it's most likely sending human Mark 1 eyeballs back up there to get eyes on whatever's happening.
Indeed. Indeed. Best Buddy, thanks so much for the support. Really appreciate that. Ben, thank you for the new membership, as well as Nimblemperuni. Thank you so much. Nimbleprune? Nimbleprune. Ah, man, it cuts it at the wrong places on my screen.
Oh, no, that's right. And Renee Rodriguez signed up as a new member as well. And I think that is the same Renee that had actually given the $50 super chat before. So thank you very much for the huge support. And also HC48 Boon K. Thank you for the new membership as well. I mean, sometimes it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's always easy. Not at all.
No, I think it's just awkwardly where my computer screen breaks some of the words.
Yeah.
Doc asking, is the methane production site online yet? Go shuttle for Chris. Well, yes, of course. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that in more ways than one. Is the propellant production plant online yet? I believe they've done some testing, but they haven't gone like all out yet. And anyone have a different memory of that?
I do not know.
No, so moving on. Yes.
Yeah, we've seen it stacked over there. We see lights on it and stuff like that, but we don't see any. It almost looks like it's in test mode or something like that. There's no farm. There's no propellant farm out there. So even if they were producing any reasonable amount of oxygen or methane, either one, where would they be putting it? Looks like they're still building that out.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And Daryl with a good question. So a few minutes ago, we were talking about how they can build boosters in ships in Texas and then haul them to launch sites at Texas and then just launch them out to oil rigs if needed, converted oil rigs if needed, and their sea launch platforms. So this is a question, can Starship fly to an oil rig platform with its satellite payload on board? Satellites are not necessarily lightweight. Fascinating question. There's a lot regarding how the payloads are going to be put into this that aren't known yet, because a lot of payloads require clean room level encapsulation. So that's a fascinating question. That is going to definitely be one of the questions at the definitely going to be one of the questions I hope SpaceX is ready to start talking about at the Starship update. But we don't really know how the propellants are going. How the payloads are being installed just yet, and I think that having that answer will inform how they do it on the sea launch locations.
New membership from Susan. Thank you very much, Susan.
And Rebel, thank you so much for the support there. You had a question about the grid fins and how they would turn during flight. I think we ended up coincidentally answering that right around the time you asked it, which is no, they will not be rotated by 90 degrees exactly as you see them now, stuck out perfectly horizontally is how they will work during ascent.
It looks weird. Like you,
Yes,
you wouldn't think that there would just be something sticking straight out of a rocket like that, but the way that they are configured, it's not going to affect drag, really.
Yes, I believe, as I go frantically try to confirm this, I believe the N1 rocket had some grid fins that stuck out from it during ascent on its first stage. But yes, I definitely remember seeing something about that, the Block A first stage. The Block A first stage of the N1 Soviet rocket also included 4 grid fins, which were later used on the Soviet air-to-air missile design. So yeah, the Soviet N1 rocket had grid fins that stuck out of the first stage of it during ascent.
And Jeffrey Cornish, James Greenwood, and Gunfox all coming in with new memberships. Thank all of you very, very much. Helps keep the lights on, helps keeps the streams going, and also the 24/7 live stream that we have, always pointed here at Boca Chica.
Yeah, that's some people don't know about that. We actually have 2 live streams going right now. One is our Starbase Live 24/7 stream, and the other one's this special commentated stream. So what happens when there's an event, we always have Starbase Live going, and we'll create a new stream that has the commentary. But right now we're showing all the cameras that you don't see on this stream on the other stream. So let's get a link into chat. If y'all want to see the other stream, you can go and see some other camera angles. You can also see what's going on with Ship 20 in the high bay. That sort of goes into or Michael could just show it here instead of incentivizing people to go to the other stream. Thank you, Michael. We have all, we have all those cameras.
Just a tease.
It was a tease, okay. We have those cameras over on Starbase Live. Let's get a couple links into chat if y'all want to see that other stream that's always been online. It went online at what, July 12th, I think is when we fired that thing up. Yep.
That's great. If you wanted to get a look at Starship 20 in high bay right now.
Yeah.
Indeed. George, thank you so much for the new membership. And Simon, thank you so much for the 10 euros toward the NSF News helicopter. We'll add that to the list of improvements. Yeah.
Put that right in the front. I'll learn. I've always wanted to learn how to fly a helicopter. I'll be down there.
Yes, indeed.
IT, the NSF News chopper.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew, you have a really good question here. That's a totally hypothetical one. That we're gonna. I'll come back. We'll find the answer for it. It's so cool. How much delta V would be needed to go straight up to escape a gravity well instead of pitching over to achieve orbital velocity? It's a great question, and I can find it for you, but give me time. I did not mean to. I wanted to put that out there. I'm gonna go find it for you, but great question. Darren Craig, if Starship launches to and from sea platforms and never goes anywhere near land, does it still need flight termination system? Yes, because the flight termination system is not just to protect land and people on land. It is also to protect air and sea assets as well. And if you had a failure that resulted in the engine still firing and an inability to shut them down, but no way to destroy the vehicle, and it's not controllable, and it strays far, it can stray far out of its downrange corridor, which would then start to affect shipping lanes and things like that. So yes, wherever a rocket launches from, the U.S. regulatory process mandates that there is some type of a flight termination system on board. Now, there are different types of flight termination systems. There are the suborbital trajectory at that point. But yes, it would need one of those two as a U.S. rocket.
Stream looking into it.
We did what?
We lost the stream, but it shows nominal on all of our servers.
What's the output look at the graph?
It looks nominal. Everything's nominal.
So YouTube side?
I think it looks like we recovered.
I've got it.
Yep, we recovered.
Something on YouTube side. None of the graphs or anything show any issue, Michael?
It should be back.
Nope. We're showing a flat graph. Our broadcasting system was green the entire time. Our YouTube page never said it lost connection.
Yep, we should be.
Absolutely
It sounds
no
like we're back
clue what
on now.
happened.
Yeah.
But
We
we
got
are
5x5
back.
in chat.
Yeah.
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 YouTube never even
weird.
gave us a stream health warning. YouTube's telling us stream is excellent. Stream health is excellent the entire time since we started 2 hours ago. That looks like one of those YouTube drop things. I don't actually know why those happen.
Well,
We're
the
back.
booster is right where it was when we
Yeah.
dropped.
You didn't miss anything. Refresh. If you're going to spam anything, if you can hear what we're saying and you're going to say anything in chat, just say refresh. Tell other people to refresh. For some people on various connections and browsers and stuff, they may have to refresh the stream to get it going. That looks like that might have been a YouTube hiccup because everything we see says that our output was nominal the entire time. Huh.
Servers are hard.
Yeah, servers are hard.
A couple of new
look
memberships.
at chat. Look at chat being useful, DK. They're
There
saying
you go.
refresh.
Refresh.
Yeah. Thank you, chat. That's a huge help. Better than spamming F. Like that's not a useful thing to say. We appreciate it.
No, actually though, I saw it buffering on my end, and I will say the F spams did help me confirm. That
Yeah,
it's not...
I noticed the F spam before the buffer.
Yeah. Fair. That's fair.
From Andy in Finland and Mark, both new members. Thank you very, very much. From Chuck Shaw, 1593, will Super Heavy perform a re-entry burn similar to Falcon 9?
Do we have a confirmation that they're going to do a re-entry burn?
No, that's why I asked.
I'm pretty sure Elon confirmed there will not be a re-entry burn.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah. Huh. That's why I asked. It's like what exactly was confirmed because we haven't actually seen SpaceX release. Here's exactly what's going to happen. It's sort of like Elon tweets and statements and comments and stuff like that. So I think the last thing that we saw is Elon saying that they didn't need to do an entry burn, which is interesting. We'll see.
Let's see, are we on, is this now Mary's cam that we're looking at for this other angle?
Yeah, this is Mary. So
looking through all of the super chats and the chats, making sure there's questions that we haven't answered yet that we're going to answer.
Which we're still sort of looking into that hiccup there. We're trying to gather data to see if there's anything that we could do to prevent that would happening. But every one of our systems and every green light is blinking correctly. We even have graphs of the output and stuff like that. And YouTube itself didn't even tell us there was a problem. It just buffered for 15 to 20 seconds, it looks like, and that'll freeze up some people. So,
From chat, sorry for just typing F. I just wanted to pay some respects.
Oh no. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, when people have an issue, saying that they have an issue is useful for us because the people watching are sort of our remote production team. We're not a news team with like, 100 people and we have millions of dollars worth of studio equipment. Like, literally not that. Like, imagine that and then imagine the opposite of that, and that's what we have. So it is useful when y'all tell us that there's some sort of issue. And then when we come up with the solution or the way to mitigate the issue or something like that, then change from spamming F to spamming refresh or whatever we say you can do to fix it.
Das, I don't know. So from Dog Cruise, it looks like Super Heavy is constantly pressurized. So how do they swap engines?
Let's see here. Super Heavy constantly pressurized. How do they swap engines?
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a way to stop the flow of fuel and oxygen to the engines. So you have to have valves and actuators and stuff like that. So certainly you should be able to close off any outputs to the engines, I would assume. You know something? I don't know. Is it just a hole in the bottom of the thrust dome and then the engine handles its own valving? Or is there a way that they can, I think that's where the question's going. Is there a way that they can cut that pressure? Maybe when they're working with the engines, it's not pressurized. I don't believe that it's constantly pressurized because we've seen the hatches in the side of it open on occasion and them doing work inside of the booster. So it can't be constantly pressurized.
Sure. So yes, they're just pressurizing when they,
Yep.
like when they move it yesterday, and
yep, it may
when they're going
be.
to stack it.
Yeah, like when you're installing engines, maybe you have to have the crane on it, and you unload some of the weight of the booster from the booster itself, and you have the crane help out. You depressurize it, you work on the engines, and then when it needs the freestand from the crane, that's when you're worried about the internal pressurization. So maybe that's how that works. That's a really good question. That's a good insight into how they actually, or I guess just a good question on how they actually manage that. But don't know the exact answer.
Looking like we still have our crane up there checking out the load spreader, that triangle at the top of the booster there.
Looks like they moved up a little bit to the very
looks like
top.
they're just inspecting things, making sure it's all in order.
Yep.
And then, so we got Alt Tom with a new membership coming through. Thank you very, very much, Alt Tom. And thank you, everybody who's dropping in these super chats. We're trying to get to all of them. There's no way that we can actually, you just logistically ask and answer all of the questions. But thank you, everyone, for all of the support. And even when people in the chat, and just if you're not chatting, if you're not super chatting, you're just watching, thank you very much. That is a great way to support NASA Spaceflight as well.
100%.
From Grant Fields, as I've been a daily follower for almost a year now, and this is my first super chat. Will the black tanks be moved? They don't look final. We're talking about the COPVs, and that's on Booster 4. That is, they aren't going anywhere on Booster 4, but there's some talk about where they will continue to be on future boosters.
We don't have the skirt at the back like we have on the Starship. It's just the engines are just there. And so are they going to put aero covers on them? Do they not need to worry about it for the first flight test? Is one of those COPVs going to explode during re-entry? Not exactly sure, but certainly something SpaceX has thought about it. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them put some sort of aero covers or something on them like we've seen at the leading edges of the flaps and the nose cone. Or I guess it's both flaps that have the aero covers on the front. So I would imagine that it's something they thought of, and we'll see them attach something like that if they think that they need it for the first test.
And we have a view again now of that lift up towards that crane. I have a question. What are those green straps possibly made out of? What has a 200-ton? What has a 200-ton tensile strength?
Yes. So it's sort of a defense in depth sort of thing. Like, you can break one pencil, but can you break like 100 pencils at once? And you can see there's lots of straps there. What exactly they're made of, I have a crane buddy who I can ask, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, it came through in chat, and the screen updated, and I missed it. But somebody had asked, and forgive me for not being able to put your name on screen, but it's a good question because I don't actually know.
The crane operator is watching, and he said nylon, generally.
Oh, okay, great.
So like a high tensile strength nylon, and it's woven, and it's lots of straps. It's not just one strap. It's multiple straps in a line there. So he's apparently watching the stream, and I had the answer in my DMs before I even asked him the question.
Oh, that's great.
Appreciate you, man.
From Arthur Cardy, a $50 super chat. What is the max range of the booster? How will it get to other launch sites around the world? I don't know if we know the range.
That's a great question. They have not said. But in terms of how it will get to other launch sites around the world, it will fly itself there. That's how they'll do it.
It's going to end up in the drink off the coast of Hawaii, right? So it's got to be able to go at least that far.
No, the booster will stay in the Gulf of Mexico.
Did we change that again?
The booster? No, the booster is always in the Gulf of Mexico. You're thinking of the ship. The ship will come down over north of Hawaii, but this question was about the maximum range of the booster.
Oh, okay.
Of the Super Heavy, yeah. No, the Super Heavy was never going to leave the Gulf of Mexico for the test flight. But yeah, I mean, we don't know their exact range. The Falcon 9s can make it 1,000 kilometers downrange and still land successfully. The boosters, by their design, are going to be burning longer than the Falcon 9 first stages, so they'll be able to make it farther downrange. But in terms of what that specific number is, how far can they get themselves on each hop to a new landing site, so to speak, or a new launch site, so to speak, they haven't said.
Some new memberships coming through from Parsec TV and Andrew Vandenberg. Thank you very much for the new memberships. Also, Rodrigo Lopez and Jose Figueroa. Thank you for just the super chats. Everybody that's coming through. And then Dougal. It's 1 year anniversary since the SN5 hop. I don't know if that's to the day. Just going through all the questions here, everybody. Let's see. This question, I don't. The crane is lowering now. We got my head in chat over here. All right, that crane's coming down. Looking like we might be now. Again, looking for a lift, a crane assist. What was the shoot? Crane assisted landing. The
crane assisted takeoff.
Yeah,
takeoff.
Crane assisted takeoff.
That's CATO. That's what it was. I couldn't remember the acronym that you had. Oh goodness. I mean, the landing will also be crane assisted. Let's see.
That is a good sign. I'm wondering why the Buckner crane has that odd load spreader just hanging out up there. We thought yesterday that they were going to go for something with a cryo shell, but it's just been hanging out at like half mast there for a while. Huh.
That is definitely a cryo shell load spreader, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just been hanging out. That's the other load spreader that's just dangling about halfway up the yellow crane there, y'all.
Yeah, and actually a question from a super chat here asking if when they'll start putting the GSE shells over the tanks. I don't know if we have a timeline for that at this point.
I don't think we have a timeline for that. No. They appear staged and ready to do it, but we also know they've been working some things with those cryo tanks and everything after they were delivered. So they're probably trying to make sure everything is ship shape, so to speak, with those before putting them on. But no timeline just yet.
Just going through all of the chats, seeing if we have any questions that we haven't actually addressed. A lot of people are asking about the COPVs and things that we've talked about previously, and also like with the grid fins. It's very much an interest. They are locked in position. They're not going to fold back in any kind of way. But with their current orientation, they're also not going to affect any kind of drag, not really, for ascent. Yeah, here's a question there. Will the grid fin cause an issue like drag? No, not at all. With the current orientation, the air is just going to go right through it. It's only for descent.
And Jose, thank you so much for the support, and Tomcat as well. It is truly amazing how fast this is going and how science fiction-y it is.
Oh, absolutely.
To watch it happen, absolutely, absolutely amazing. Yeah, and 13V4, thanks so much for the support as well there. And yeah, noting that the Soyuz launch abort system also has grid fins as well for stability. Although those are not deployed unless there's an abort with the Soyuz rocket. Bryce asking what the black COPVs at the base of the vehicle are for. They are for methane and oxygen tank pressurization and to provide some of the needed pressures for the startup of the engines right now. That's what the COPVs are for.
So from Benjamin Jackson, we have a super chat. I know I've seen an explanation about this before, but would it be feasible to use parachutes to slow down the booster on reentry? Could you redirect it with thrusters and forgo reentry burn entirely? That's not the plan, because they want to have a very, very quick turnaround with these boosters where they will go for a launch, come down, land, be caught, and be set back up to launch again within the hour is the current...
Yeah.
the current... Which I say that and I'm like, okay, it's just seems absolutely insane that they'd be able to do that. But that is the current plan as per Elon in a tweet yesterday.
Indeed, and parachutes become really complicated and really cost prohibitive at a certain point, because if you land the booster via parachute, you then have to take time to examine that parachute, make sure it's not damaged, repack that parachute. Whereas with the system that they sort of have, the engine's light, it gets caught by the tower, it gets placed back on the stand, it gets plugged back into all the electrical systems that look at its system, that look at all of its internal systems and go, yep, you're good, all still functioning well, and then you just add more fuel and go. Whereas it would be a multi-day process to repack parachutes and stuff like that.
I've seen this question a couple of different ways, asking what the large yellow and black frames are for. Is that just in reference to the cranes, or
the yellow and black
big
frame?
arms?
Oh, the arms.
Tubes,
yeah.
Oh,
those things that we think are waiting to be stacked on the tower and everything, right?
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's from the dailies that are coming through. Nothing that we can see
Yes.
on this screen
Yeah,
now?
you got it,
Okay.
you got it.
Now I
Yep.
understand. Oh, yeah, I thought it was something on screen, and I'm like, I mean, there's some cranes. But yeah. So all those structures that are coming in through from our daily videos that we have every single day, we post updates on what is being seen down at Boca Chica.
And Himanshu is asking, when will they lift? Is anything wrong with B4? We've seen them doing some more inspect. Gosh, that's a great shot of the storm complex. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Talking about the rain there, we're all pulling weather reports for Mary and Jack because we want to know. And it's one thing to look up the weather report and be like, 50% chance of rain. It's another thing to point one of the robots at the sky and look.
Yeah.
Mark 1 eyeball, as you call it, right?
Yep, Mark 1 eyeball. That is that's actually to the west of the production site. You can still see the production site, which means it's not raining at the production site. This is looking out from the beach, but a big thunderstorm there bubbling up, or a big rainstorm bubbling up in that direction. On the road, that's on Highway 4 between Brownsville and Boca Chica. Not looking like it's coming this way. You can see the edge of the cloud system there, and then blue skies up behind it. But definitely want to give Mary and Jack a heads up if they're about to get soaked. There you can see the angle from the river. This is a couple miles away from that other camera, and actively some rain going past the camera there. But over on the left-hand side is where that rain is, and the right-hand side is still clear. Let's hope it stays that way.
But yeah, Himanshu was asking, when will they lift B4? Is there anything wrong? Well, it was supposed to lift about an hour ago based on when Hopper made its announcement of when the lift was anticipated. So clearly something slowed them down. What that is, we don't know, but clearly something slowed them down. But all indications are that they're still preparing to lift. We just saw a few people go up in a lift to take a look at the top attach rigging and everything up there. So indications are that they're still proceeding with plans to lift it today, but exactly what delayed them from the first announcement, we don't know yet. Al, thank you so much for the new membership, and Bob, thank you for the support. Really, really appreciate it. Great question here from Steve Bowen. How many engines could fail on a super heavy before the launch would need to be aborted? That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. We know the thrust to weight ratio is roughly 1 to 5. Sorry, 1.5. Let's try that again.
1 to 5. Wow.
1 to 5. Yeah, let's try that again. 1.5.
Not taking off with one thrust for 5 weights, like not going anywhere.
Yeah. Try that again. Thrust to weight ratio of 1.5, which is a very healthy thrust to weight ratio. Exactly how many Raptors could fail before you'd be in trouble, SpaceX has not said. Hopefully that's something Elon could sort of talk about in the next update when he talks about all the differences between the design now and when he last updated us about 2 years ago now, actually, on it. So yeah. Exactly how many can fail, we don't know, but we do know that they have said that just like Falcon 9, they plan to build in engine redundancy to the system. If the first Mars, let me see where.
Chris, I just put the river camera angle over
Yeah.
on the 24/7 stream, and I told people watching the 24/7 stream that if the storm starts to go towards the high bay, to let us know. Somebody keep an eye on that storm.
Yes, keep an eye on it. Let us know where it's going. I love that.
My solution to everything is a camera. Like, I don't know,
Yeah,
point a
right?
camera at it. Weather? I don't know. Somebody keep an eye on this camera. Like, I have a hammer, and everything looks like a nail to me.
HC48 Bunk is asking here, besides oil rigs, what are the plans, if any, or even speculation about a second orbital launch site from land? Also, thanks for all you guys do. There are 2 orbital launch sites planned under the most recent filings from SpaceX for Starbase. We only see them working on 1 right now, but there are 2 under their plan. Also, the site at the Kennedy Space Center inside Launch Complex 39A. There is another one that is also still an orbital launch site in their plans. Jesse, thanks so much for the new membership. Love it. Brady Snell is asking, why not use SN15 and BN3 as storage tanks for fueling boosters and ships? Well, yes, they are gigantic tanks. However, what you are seeing there at the with the sort of steel tanks that are made from the same material as the Starships, right? What you're seeing is that there's a cryo shell that goes over them to provide conditioning to make sure that once you pump all of that cryogenic propellant into those storage tanks, you're not needlessly boiling it off and boiling it off and boiling it off because you can't keep it cold, right? So the cryo shells are really needed. And to be fair, the booster and the ship were just not designed to do that. They were designed to hold the propellants for a short period of time for the actual use by the engines. So they're not optimized in that way to be storage and distribution tanks.
That was
But it's a great question.
Great verbose answer, yeah.
There you go.
Hunter Barkley is asking, what is with the ribbed sections at the middle and the top of Starship? Great question. So these are what are known as stringers. And basically, exactly as you described it, they're ribbing sections that are applied over top of the base design. And basically, they are where 2 tanks or where there are particular stress points on the vehicle where they know they need just a little bit more reinforcement. So like where tanks are joined together at the intertank structure there at the top. And it's fairly common to use stringers for that type of support within rocketry and large tank booster sections like this. So not a surprise at all to see it there. But yeah, just there for a better rigidity and support during flight. Yeah.
From Mr. X, Mr. Y, I don't know this offhand. Asking how are the booster and ship attached to each other? Like, how is that attachment actually going to happen?
Saw it. Yeah, I think we saw it yesterday. on the photo that Elon tweeted of it rolling out of the high bay, there are little attach points on the top of the intertank structure of the booster that are the attach points for the ship of where it will click together with its booster.
Did you say click together?
That's my adjective for it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just a little click. You know, it's like a Lego.
I made the noise too, but I think the sound suppression canceled it out on the microphone.
Oh, okay.
So then I said it. Yeah.
So from this angle right here, the production site is on the right, and the launch site is on the left. And if you look very closely, I think the clouds are moving to the left.
Okay, well. And I don't know, is the fear of that coming through potentially delaying things, or is that going to, or like have already delayed things, or is that certainly going to affect things coming up?
It could definitely affect things coming up. It's hard to say why. I mean, we heard the 30-minute announcement. I think if that had gone on time, they would have had enough time to lift it and be done before the storm hit. But at this point, it is definitely something they're going to be watching.
Sure. Oh, okay, this is interesting. From Animus 1539, do we know where SN20's flaps, well, Starship 20's, that change in naming scheme is what's going to get me every time, how the flaps are going to be oriented once stacked? Are they going to be between the grid fins or in the larger space between the fins?
That's an excellent question.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they will be like in the smaller of the two gaps.
Yeah,
so I think that's where the fins are positioned, where when the ship is on top of it.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. With the orientation of that, it is such so that it can actually go right up close next to that tower when, as like the catching mechanism goes, which is why those fins aren't actually placed at exact 90-degree angles. They're offset by a little while. And actually, I don't know offhand the angle.
I don't know offhand the angle. I've been sort of roughly guessing 30 degrees, but I could be wrong on that.
Enough that it's going to clear the tower regardless, but
so the grid fins won't impact the tower, but they're actually there for the support when they land, so that the arms, so that both sides of the booster are touching onto grid fins, when they touch down onto the catch arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. John Carr, new membership. Thank you very much. From Greg, we got a $10 super chat, and the message also says $10. If there's a question that was meant to be in there, it is not. I'm really sorry if that happened over on YouTube. I've done that before. Oh my goodness. Okay, we can see the rain coming in now.
And this is about 3 miles away. And we showed that other camera that kind of showed that this system is moving towards the launch site.
And a great question here from Max. Max is asking, why need a fueling arm now? I thought the plan was to fuel from the bottom through the booster as would be needed for on-orbit refueling. You're exactly right. Elon has said a few times during this test campaign that they don't need every single part of the system up and running in order to test it. So the fueling arm could be a couple of things. It could be a stopgap until they are ready for that other fueling mechanism. It could also be that when they ran the numbers, that it's just quicker to fuel it with a dedicated fueling arm, and the quicker you can turn the vehicles around, that's a goal. So it might come down to a timing and quickness and efficiency perspective. It might also be that this part of the design just isn't there yet, so they don't have it to use, so they had to come up with an interim stopgap, if that makes sense.
I don't know if this. So Armando is asking why won't the grid fins lay flat or operate like they do on the smaller boosters? I think that's just the design of them. Why did they move to that? Does that make sense? Like why? Because I guess they don't have to.
Well, yes and no.
Okay,
they're feathered, so that right now, so they're in their most aerodynamically efficient position right now in the deployed sense of that. They on Falcon 9s they fold down during liftoff to help reduce drag even more, and then they pop out after the booster separates. But Starship's bigger, Starship's more powerful. It has more reserve to it. They don't need to fold in this case. Starship can just sort of compensate for it in this regard. So that's the difference. They just don't have to based on this design.
Mm-hmm.
And it simplifies things, right? Because if they're how your booster gets caught by the tower, then you don't want them to fold, because if they don't pop out, right? If they don't fold out, if you fold them down after liftoff, then you can't catch the booster. So if you just make them rigid like that, your catch system is right there all the time and doesn't have to, and you don't have a point of failure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just anytime you can remove complications or
Yep.
yeah, it's just as simple as possible. Always, that's just another point of possible failure. Exactly.
Here's a good question from Ryan. I'm gonna go with the last name there. Great question here. Are there any obligations on SpaceX to ensuring hardware is sterile when going to Mars to avoid transporting terrestrial bacterial organisms? There are a couple ways to answer this. One, from the point of view of planetary protection, there are rules that generally have to be followed in terms of cleanliness. You run into a slight issue with that because humans could be considered terrestrial bacterial organisms, and you can't decontaminate a human. So you are correct. There are cleanliness guidelines and standards that are adhered to for the Mars robotic vehicles that go to the surface and everything like that. You can't ever truly decontaminate them completely, but you can do like the best job we can possibly do for them. However, you can't decontaminate a human. So it's going to be interesting to see where that balance is. But as far as I understand it, there are still some obligations for planetary protection that would be wrapped into U.S. government regulations for spaceflight and visiting other bodies.
If you just look at the sky in our shot over the last little while here, it's gotten real gray and dark. KH Benner putting a super chat through said, I thought Elon said that they're not catching the fins, but by the structural pins below. If I said they're catching the fins, then I misspoke. That's exactly correct, but the fins would otherwise potentially be in the way as it was caught. The hopeful astronaut in chat asking, is it a possibility that the load spreader is for for Starship 20? I think they're talking about the smaller gray crane that's near there that has the load spreader, and it's been sort of just hanging out since yesterday when we moved the booster over. There's a shot up there, yeah. On the left, just to the left of the booster, we have that load spreader, and I think best we know those are for the cryo shells, or is that conjecture?
It's a larger diameter.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty wide.
We've seen the Starship load spreaders before. We know what they look like. That is a cryo shell load spreader.
Computer Coma coming in with a new membership. Thank you very much. Let's see. From Sean McCallum in chat, do you think any of the 35 Raptors from Booster 4 and Starship 20 will be able to be recovered or refurbished after landing in the water? It's definitely a very expensive test, if not. I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
It is. I do not believe the answer is they plan to recover any of them. Water landings are massively hard with the saltwater corrosion and everything. We have seen no indication that they plan to recover any element of B4 or Ship 20. Now, with all that, there's the huge caveat of who knows what the current flight plan is. But based on the most recent one that was filed, there is no plan to recover them. No.
Then to confirm what Sean said, yeah, that's an expensive test. Ryan Bray coming in with a new membership. Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you, everybody who is helping out, contributing, and also just watching, just checking out the stream. We are currently experiencing a bit of a storm front coming through. We got some rain. That sky has gone very, very gray very quickly. Let's see. Your boy Sprinkles asking, how would testing differ between the sea level and the vacuum engines? As far as a test goes, if for a static fire, well, here comes the radar.
Yeah, I got the weather radar up really quickly here, and you can see from the NASA Spaceflight Storm Center that I don't know. Actually, the test site is right in this area here. And there's going to be a little bit of a delay, but the test site is right around in here. The high bay and production site is back here. South Padre to the north and Brownsville off to the west. But if I turn the overlay back on, you can see currently the storm is right there on the edge of the production site, and we're starting to get some sprinkles out there near the test site. And if I animate this back and forth a little bit, I'm just pulling it back here. This has just recently bubbled up. It's not a major system that seems to be blowing into the area, but if I go forwards, you can see that it has been growing on to the west of the production site, and it does look like it is slowly but surely inching that way. So what we may be seeing here is a hold in the operations due to the weather. Again, I'm not the weather person. I just have a weather app and a way to draw on it. But I mean,
it's all you need, Das.
That's all I can do, right? But it looks like they may be holding due to that big rain system. It's about over the production site, and if we have the river camera, you can see that what was previously a storm system off to the west of river is now a storm system right on top of the camera. You can't see the production site anymore.
Yeah.
And previously it was right there in that shot. So this does seem to be going from the west to the east a little bit, if not blowing in that direction, maybe just bubbling up in that direction. And that may be why we are at a hold here out with the lift of Booster 3.
Yeah. Well, I'm also looking at the Goes East weather satellite, and whatever that little storm complex is that's over you is very isolated, because that appears to be the only place in South Texas where it is raining right now.
Yep, that's exactly right. I've got, this looks like this is Mars Cam if I had to guess, and you can see the rain on the right-hand side here from this angle to the right where the 50-mile-an-hour sign, remember the rollout yesterday? That's where the production site is, over to the right of this camera, and then to the left is where the launch site is, where the crane, Booster 3, Booster 4, etc., etc. So even though it's clear in this direction, this is looking from the beach over, that rain does seem like it may be coming this way. So are they going to try a lift knowing that they may get some rain shortly? Maybe that's what they're holding on. Again, we're just sort of guesstimating. We can look at weather radar and we can look at cameras and we can sort of say, oh yeah, well, I don't know if I'd want to have a 200-ton booster in the air while that's coming through.
Yeah, we don't actually have a direct line from SpaceX yet.
Yeah, exactly. SpaceX, DMs are open.
Yeah, there you go.
You can actually see it behind here. You see how the crane is a little bit grayed out. There's a little bit of precipitation before that crane, and can still see into the high bay, but that seagull looks like it's going to turn around and fly away from the... There's just live commentary on the flight.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Right? 100%. The Boca Chica weather chopper there looks like a seagull. So, of course, they can still work on Ship 20 there because that's inside the high bay now. But I'm wondering what we should do here, y'all. We've answered lots of questions.
Well, I mean, real quick, back to my boy Sprinkles.
Oh yes.
asking how the
Speaking of rain.
how the testing would differ between the sea level engines and the vacuum engines. I mean, for a static test, it's the same. You're still just firing them. It's just the engines themselves just have different specific impulses at sea level versus also in a vacuum. So the vacuum engines are still going to be able to fire. They just won't be. They won't have any lift, which is fine if you're doing a static fire because you're not trying to get lift anyway.
Yeah, indeed.
So we're looking at the situation here, y'all. We don't want to keep you hanging. They were doing everything towards a lift, and then, like I said, this wasn't even a big system that was moving in that direction. This was something that bubbled up over the course of the morning. So maybe this wasn't quite predicted. We saw them hook up the taglines. We saw them hook up the load spreader. That big lift up to the top a couple times there, making sure everything was good to go. And not sure that they're going to go for it right now, just given the conditions out there. But
Yeah, and we
Go
have
ahead.
some news. There's now lightning in the area. Jack heard it. I see it on the radar map. I don't know if you can show that on your map, DOS, but Jack is now going to have to go get cover. So
Yeah.
we are running out of cameras here. We're going to be down to just robots, and there is no evidence. I mean, there's lightning within a 10-mile radius, so they're going to have to go into their lightning warning. There is basically no possibility of a lift for the next, well, until the storm passes through, so.
Yeah. I've got 20-minute lightning right now, so it hasn't popped up on the interface that I use for the stream output. But I definitely see it's bubbling up. It is getting larger, that's for sure. Yeah, so Jack's going to roll his camera in, y'all. Mary's already rolled her cameras in because she had multiple cameras to wrangle there. But it sounds like Jack's reporting they may be in a Phase 2 lightning warning there.
Phase 2 lightning warning, if that means the same thing at the Cape, it means all work stops immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, Chris. So, y'all, what we may do here, remember, Starbase Live is live 24/7. The robots can get rained on all the time. They are weatherproof cameras that are designed to be out there in the heat and the rain and everything. So what we may do is pull in our human operators and actually head on over to Starbase Live. I'm saying this out loud, but I think that might be what we do, right, y'all?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Before we do, can I just run through? There are a few super chats we haven't gotten to yet.
Oh, of course.
That I just want to run through real quick. There are a couple that I know some of you have been asking about. Where is it? Another question about Starliner, about when Starliner will fly. We don't know yet. Its launch date is nebulous and up in the air. And according to a tweet from our managing editor, Chris Bergen, there does appear to be a possibility that it might have to be. I'm going to read exactly what he said. Hang on. In his tweet. But for the Starliner thing, he says, all the vehicles are back at Slick 41 to pick up the Atlas and bring it back to its vertical integration facility. The, quote, next steps may include demating Starliner from the Atlas V for corrective action, but we will wait for Boeing to update the status once they're back in the integration facility. But potentially that they might need to destack on that one. But that's where we are on that one. Scott, thanks for the support, saying that Elon said in Tim's video that the catch point isn't actually the grid fins themselves, but a couple of feet below them on stubby little brackets. That is good to know. We'll see if we can find those.
That's what we were referring to earlier.
Yeah,
that's the same point that they attach the crane to.
Yes, the same points they okay, perfect.
Yep,
there we go. Daniel saying, do we ever see or hear Mary? Mary doesn't like to be on streams, but she's always out there supporting us and when we are live, as well as doing all the daily videos as well. But yeah, thank you so much.
Coming in here.
And with the rain, oh my gosh, look at that. So thank you very much for that. Very much. And Andrew, we will get you that Delta V hypothetical question. I really promise you on that one.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I don't know.
Yeah, that is a very good one. Simon with a good question here. Thank you for the support. Just asking basically what's going to happen the first time someone dies in space. Because we haven't had it happen. Well, we've had it technically happen, but it hasn't happened like, you wake up one morning and someone has passed overnight. We did have 3 people, Russian, Soviet cosmonauts who died technically in space when their spacecraft depressurized after the deorbit burn. But it is a good question. I know there are groups of people who think about this and who are developing the procedures and, what would happen? How does that news get broken to the general public after families are informed? And yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens in terms of public morale. If it's nothing untoward, if it's natural and stuff like that, there might not be a lot of regulations that change. If there are accidents, they're the things you learn from and you develop the procedures to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's something we're going to have to face, but hopefully it's something that we are prepared for as a society as well, because that day is coming. And we
Yeah.
know that NASA and Roscosmos and ESA and Canada and JAXA have these contingency plans in place in case it should ever happen on the International Space Station, because it can. Nothing's guaranteed. You can be a healthy person 1 second. The plans and procedures are there, but yeah, exactly what effect that'll have on morale, it's a good question. I'm not sure, but I do hope that people would understand that it's in some ways part of expanding to new places.
Certainly,
doing what's
anyone
hard.
involved would know the risk.
Right. Right.
You know.
And Chris, a super serious topic there. This dangers of being in space and loss of human life. Right when we switched to this camera, we actually saw some of the lightning. We saw a bolt of lightning on Mars cam here out over the production side. So it's actually actively raining on the camera. You can see in some direction there, we've got a little bit of blue skies, but that big rain system definitely moving through the area right now. So I didn't want to interrupt on that one because that is a super serious topic that we take seriously. But yeah.
And Kat asking, booster landings have to be crazy accurate. Yes, they do. A little wiggle room side to side, not so much, close, far from the tower. So there's going to be some wiggle room, right? And Elon actually said yesterday in response to an animation that he said very closely actually matched the reality of the current situation of how the boosters would be caught. Is that the arms would be able to compensate in real time for where the booster was. So the arms would be able to move around a little bit to help with some of that accuracy. Last question here, definitely about some of the militarization aspects of space, and that Starship could be used to bring military satellites and stuff into orbit. It certainly could. There's technically a space weapons treaty ban for things like that. But yeah, there are definitely military applications that the military is certainly looking at, including like Earth and like Earth point to point for troop transportation and stuff like that. But definitely, and Andrew, I do see your final super chat about that Delta V without going to orbit, which I will attempt to find for you. But with that, I think if we're in a good position to want to wrap up, we can certainly do that as the windshield wipers go on the camera looking straight up. I love it.
I literally pointed the camera straight up so it would rain on the lens, and then I ran the wiper to try and clean the lens off. But you can see it's actively raining on Mars cam there. Good times, good times. But I do believe with the situation that's happening out there and the fact that they were in an announced Phase 2 lightning warning, stopping all work on everything that's going on, we're going to go ahead and shut this commentary stream down for now. You don't have to go anywhere. You can continue to watch what's going on Starbase Live. And in fact, we'll open up some of these other cameras on Starbase Live. And it's really cool over there because you can see it's raining here and it's raining there, but it's not raining there yet. Like beach versus highway versus river. Cameras are physically miles apart. So if you want, let's get that link into chat over to Starbase Live. And for now, we're going to shut down this stream. And if we see a clear indication that they're going to be going for the lift again, we may spool up another one. We may just break into Starbase Live if it's sort of an unexpected thing with commentary there. But I believe we should shut this down for now. Let's go around the horn and just put the names to the voices really quickly. My name is John Galloway. You've heard me talking some. Also joined by Chris Gebhardt. Chris, thanks for hanging out.
Oh, my pleasure as always.
All right, and then also Derek. Derek, thank you so much for being with us. DK.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Unfortunately, it's unfortunate to get delayed by rain.
Yeah, it happens, though. At the whim of the weather, right? It's okay, Michael. I know I'm running through them because we want to clear out here. Michael Baylor back in the studio as well. Michael, thanks.
No problem, and hopefully we'll see you lift soon.
Yep, and out in the field, both Jack and Mary, I don't know that they're on comms anymore because they were sort of scrambling out from under that rain, but massive thanks to them. We're here in the studio sitting in the air conditioning, and they are out there crewing the cameras and moving things around, so massive thanks to them for rolling out today. But we'll go ahead and shut this stream down. You don't have to go anywhere. But you should go to Starbase Live, the other stream. The cameras are still going to be live. You'll be able to see what's going on. And if you're over there, you will not miss the lift because that stream is not going anywhere. But for now, NASA Spaceflight crew shining off of commentary. I don't even know what I just said. Shining off of commentary.
Shining off of commentary.
That's what I just heard. But we'll shut it down. We'll see you nerds later. See you over on Starbase Live, y'all.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
The chamber pressure looks good. Throttling up.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers can fly!
Echo Delta nominal. Flight downside SC off. Bring in SC off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.